All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. This is Morty, and I am your host, Fletch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Everybody hit that like and subscribe. You know I would do it for you, and let's party! Big shout out to the replay gang. Thank you so much for coming back to watch us, even though you missed the best part, guys. The live party is the best part, so make sure you are here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes whenever I feel like it. So hit that subscribe, ring the bell, and you will never miss an Indian Jesus party ever again. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, head over to theindianjesus.com to get your very own The Indian Jesus official merch. All right. So I'm excited for this, but I'm a little scared. I'm excited for this because I'm a little scared. Because when I first watched it, I was, just by myself in my room, freaking out at everything dude was saying. So you may be familiar with Genetically Modified Skeptic. We have covered him on the channel before. He is a great atheist YouTuber. But as just like Viking Steve, if you've been here, you know who we're talking about, Viking Steve, aka Rationality Rules. Too often, these atheists are because religion and politics have a big overlap. They seem to know that a lot about the religion and the philosophy part, but you get into the politics part and they just fall right off because they're so used to using science and reading and being right about things. Then it's very difficult to shake them from their axiom. And when you're working from your conclusion and working backwards, there's no way that you're not going to get exactly what you want. Shout out to John in the building. Shout out from Jersey all day and Jay all day. We got JL in the building. Shout out to Zippy DSM Lee. Welcome. Guys, as always, if you cannot hear the video, please do let me know.
So you have someone who's more heterosexual.
Oh, too fast. Hold on. I like this. I like that I figured out you could do 1.1.
Bisexual or homosexual.
Oh,
so
okay.
Sexual, bisexual, or homosexual. So why is there this thing where God would say, that's fine, but that's not fine. And he creates them knowingly like that. And then in the past, the church has said these people are mentally ill. They deserve to be, put in institutions, penalized, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I could go on and on about that. But my question is, why do you say that if I'm going to be a Christian again, then I need to repent from being LGBTQI+, and then accept this narrow version of the gospel? That to me is like conversion therapy, and the UN and all these other major medical organizations in the US and around the world have called that torture.
So just right off the bat, something that I tell you guys over and over and over and over and over and over again, that perception is reality. And so even though that doesn't, I don't even know who this person is talking to, but because that doesn't really represent the political argument on this side of why we shouldn't be transing kids, because they have this perception of you're not welcome or you're a bad person or this, that, and the other, then they, that's what they see. And so we have to do a better job of making sure that they understand. It's not about bigotry. It's not about power. It's about what is right. It is about what is just. It is about what's going to let our society flourish.
So for you to stand here and just defend that, that's pretty messed up.
I mean,
what is your response to that?
This is a
So yeah, just saying the argument about trans, gay, bi, they are work of the devil. And it's like, yes, I'm not trying to argue anybody out of their religious beliefs. I want to remind you all that I am here as a political advocate. That again, religion and politics do overlap. But if you believe that gay and trans people are the work of the devil, you are free to believe that. All I'm saying is that if you do believe that, maybe keep it quiet so that we can win politically. Because you saying, oh, they're demonic and da-da-da-da, isn't going to help if they are the ones that are in power. So this is Genetically Modified Skeptic here. He's going to be doing the breakdown of a bunch of different stuff, specifically from Sean McDowell and Frank Turek, two Christian apologists, who make it too easy for him to make a video like this.
That's pretty messed up. What is your response to that?
This is a pertinent and powerful question for those who wish to understand Christianity in light of LGBT issues. Why would God demand for anyone to deny or totally suppress their sexual orientation when decades of research from reputable medical organizations shows that is not evidently possible, and that organized efforts to achieve that end are extremely harmful to LGBT people?
Yeah, so already off the bat, we are, because of the way that religion presents stuff like this, we now have in the same category whether or not you're gay and should you chop off your genitals, which is not the same conversation.
This clip comes from the channel of Frank Turek, the hyper-conservative evangelical Christian apologist who I've responded to more than anyone else. If you've seen any of his content or even any of my responses to him, you can probably guess how he responds to yet another charge that his rhetoric is harmful.
Well, Mav, let me ask you a question. What is your standard of morality?
I'm myself, I'm a secular humanist. I think that everybody is innately good.
What do you mean by good?
Well, obviously murder is wrong.
Why?
Because if I went and murdered someone's kid, then that mother or father would not have a child and they would be in mourning, and that caused them some great psychological turmoil for the rest of their lives and trauma they're going to have to work through in therapy. So objectively, we can see psychologically, they're not going to be doing too hot. So of course, but that's objectively wrong.
Why is it objectively wrong to harm people?
Yeah, this is what Frank Turek always says when someone claims he's hurting people.
So you might see that and think, well, Lech kind of argues like that. Well, why? Well, why do you think that? Well, why do you think that? Well, why do you think that? But the difference is that this guy, Frank Turek, is specifically, again, working from his conclusion that God is right, and if you disagree, you must be wrong. So let's just attack you in any different way that might expose that you're not living as a Christian, and therefore you're automatically wrong. When I do it, I'm legitimately trying to understand so that I can respond to what it is that you say.
It sets him up to play what he and his fans consider his trump card.
You're importing a moral standard into your atheistic system, and you're stealing it from a theistic worldview.
Yup. Doesn't mean that God exists.
There is no objective moral standard unless some kind of God exists. Everything is just a matter of human opinion.
Turek.
Yep. Agreed. Which is why we need to sit down and have the conversations to determine, okay, just like the rules of chess, what are the rules of life? And we use science to determine what metrics do we want to use. Pain is something, well-being is something else, and what do you know? Two ends of the spectrum. If we're moving towards well-being, that's morality. If we're moving towards suffering, then it's probably not. Obviously, it's more complex than that. But this idea that you need a God is just a false premise. Jason, unless you are in a heavily influenced religion country, i.e. Dagestanis, most religions are not, most religious people are not living what they are supposedly practicing. That's a whole rabbit hole, but I completely agree with you about, the notion of if you actually believe that your holy book is a holy book, well, why are you picking and choosing which parts of it that you follow?
Reasons. No moral standard exists without the God of the Bible, so you can't make any moral claim about me unless it's founded on my God. This is a pretty...
And shout out to Zippy, religion stole morality from nature. That's a great argument. But again, so that's why I've come to the conclusion that I have no problem conceding ground that I personally did not come up with my morality, that it existed, the framework existed beforehand. And most of what I'm familiar with as right and wrong comes from the backdrop of Christianity. I have no problem with that. That doesn't mean a God exists. Shout out to Indie Film. Welcome to the party. JL said, strange how science is used to verify some claims of the old times, like the Bible or the Quran, but exclude other things science backs up. Yep, and that's exactly what we're going to get into, because GMS here, I don't know his real name, but he's going to get into a lot of the science on why it's totally fine to trans all the kids, and sadly, because he's coming from a dogmatic perspective that it is okay, then he's looking through the science in such a way that, well, of course you're going to find that solution.
Brilliant move rhetorically, as it appears to defeat any non-Christian's claim that Turek has behaved unethically.
Not me.
Of course, I could point out that even if his God's objective moral standard exists, All humans still have to interpret that standard and how to apply it through their own subjective perception.
Mhm.
This renders all moral deliberation among humans as nothing but what he calls one opinion against another. I'm not here to argue Turek's point on this, though, because if we continue watching this clip, we see Turek state a moral position of his that makes this conversation a whole lot more interesting.
And so when you hold up a sign that says that certain people have treated LGBTQ people wrongly,
Well, they have, and there's so much evidence for it.
Mav, you might be exactly right about that. But
I know I am. I have experiences and data to back it up.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that people have treated you poorly, but
You don't have to go on and spread these bigoted viewpoints on YouTube and Facebook like you do. It's just a bunch of misinformation. You have no idea. You have blood on your hands.
Okay.
And then, going from the other side around, don't do stuff like that. Don't yell at people who have a microphone and are sitting on a stage. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. You were doing so good with a very specific question, and then he came and threw you off because, what do you think about morality? If you have a question and somebody answers that question with a question, you're like, I'll answer that question as soon as you answer mine. Shout out to Dylan Soup. Welcome to the party, brother.
Points on YouTube and Facebook like you do. It's just a bunch of misinformation. You have no idea. You have blood on your hands.
Okay, Mav. Do you want to have a conversation?
No, I really just would like you to just apologize and turn around and see that what you're doing is harmful.
Mav, there's only harm if God exists. Harm is only evil if God exists. And so you're stealing
regardless if God exists or not.
Thank you, Mav. You're not interested. Thank you for coming.
And again, you see there that even if, regardless of which side you're on, whether you're the most pro-trans person or you're the most Christian person, that did not help anybody. Jail says, strange how in Islam, they justify underage marriage and claim it's a social construct. This is someone who was following this religion for years and woke up. Just my opinion, though. Yeah, I mean, it really can take a hold on you. And if you move away from it, as I have, it really, really, really changes your perspective on everything.
I think that, yes, people who identify as LGBTQ have been treated poorly. But I also think now that Christians are being treated poorly. And both of them are wrong. We ought to respect people, even if we disagree with them.
Turek says that in his moral system, harm is evil and treating LGBT people poorly is wrong. Turek and Mav actually agreed on that premise the whole time. In order to discuss whether Turek's statements on LGBT issues are morally acceptable, it wasn't necessary for Mav to explain how atheists ground their moral claims. Turek could have explored whether his statements on LGBT issues are harmful within his own moral paradigm. So why did Turek choose not to do this? Well, investigating whether or not one truly does have blood on their hands in an impromptu conversation with a stranger in front of a crowd is tough and possibly time-consuming. And when you can use a powerful piece of rhetoric to get out of that conversation entirely, then let's just say that even men of God sometimes give in to temptation. If we were to investigate Turek's statements about LGBT people while applying his moral premise that harming them is wrong, would we find that Turek was behaving immorally? He's spoken about LGBT people a lot in his work, and like Mav said, there's a wealth of research on the subject. A review of that research could reveal whether or not Frank Turek has done wrong in his own moral paradigm and, however inadvertently, gotten blood on his hands. So let's dive in. First, I want to say that this video has taken me well over a month of work, and because of the topic is
in their sexuality
of sexual violence.
How do you engage with someone whose identity is deeply rooted in their sexuality? He has a friend who's gay who has a boyfriend, and they're both very well aware of each other's beliefs, but he doesn't know what to do further with that.
Let me point out that, in fact, I was just talking to
So this is Frank Turek again.
the lady I mentioned earlier at our house today. She was visiting my wife. She's on our board, the lady that works at Starbucks. She said every one of the 4 young transitioners have had brutal upbringings. One girl was raped by her grandfather.
And something else to point out, or something else to notice here, is that I'm probably not going to disagree with the positions of the Christians on this. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is showing why, despite the fact that I agree with the Christians, they've done this whole thing wrong and have created the opportunity for Genetically Modified Skeptic to make a very convincing hour-long debunking of the notion that trans can be harmful. That is the lens that we are looking at this through. So he says the whole argument can be boiled down to how poorly the individual lives their lives. What do they have to do with God or religion? Good question. Good question. I do think this guy, the video host, comes off as smug. Genetically Modified Skeptic. I would disagree. I think he is a very chill and humble. And just thinks that he's done a lot of work here. And based on the axiom that being trans is either okay or good, then what he is going to say makes sense. But the problem is he's working off of the dogma that it's already good and looking for confirmation of that instead of asking the question, is this good? And then when you look at the information, being objective or as objective as you can be.
Another young man trying to transition to become a woman was pretty much rejected by his father and was made fun of by Christians.
This is definitely the gentlest tone I've ever heard Turek take, and it's probably the right one given the subject matter. He's saying all this to urge Christians to be compassionate toward LGBT people, right? Yeah, kind of. But also he's got another point to make.
You may think it's stupid. You may think it's
We have to save them.
wrong, but you shouldn't mock people. You shouldn't belittle them. They're struggling. In fact, a friend of mine who's a mega pastor, you would know his name if I told it to you. This is what he said, just his experience. He said, I've never met a lesbian who wasn't sexually abused. And
Never
he's
met
counseled a lot of them. So people don't just randomly say, at least older people don't randomly say, I just decided to be gay.
So the point that he is trying to make is that, oh, you're only gay or trans if something bad happened in your life. And as I'm sure many of you know, that is not the case. That's not how it works. There is definitely an overlap with people who have shitty pasts and the willingness to look at this as a lifestyle. Absolutely. But because you are, again, doing the exact opposite as the atheist here and saying, oh, well, God is the answer to everything. So the reason that people are transing themselves is because they don't have God. And I mean, that is just not strong enough of an argument. So he says, if you project individual will, all sides can be happy, but grifters need money. Yep. Ian said, simply put, they reject God because they refuse to acknowledge they live a life of sin. See, exactly. That's exactly what I'm telling you. The fact is that you have to separate your private beliefs. You have to. If you want to win politically, you have to separate your private beliefs from your public message. If they are one and the same, you will lose. This is not about anything other than political success.
There's something that happened in their lives normally.
Yeah, he told a room full of students that abuse and trauma is the cause of LGBT orientations and identities. What's his evidence for this?
The lady that works at Starbucks. She said every one of the 4 young transitioners have had brutal upbringings.
Again, so now we're talking about transitioners. The argument between having a bad past and transitioning versus having a bad past and being gay is so detrimental to the point that, look, all of the trans kids have a bad upbringing because you're muddying that with, well, some gays also. Why? Because your point is not, let's make the kids all right. The point is we have to get back to God. They're both doing the exact and opposite thing.
Transitioners have had brutal upbringing.
No, I mean, everybody must compromise or everybody will lose.
In fact, a friend of mine who's a mega pastor, you would know his name if I told it to you. This is what he said, just his experience. He said, I've never met a lesbian who wasn't sexually abused.
A couple of his friends told him so. No studies or any academic sources cited. He's basing this on secondhand anecdotal evidence alone. The problem with anecdotes is that the process of collecting data to inform the conclusion is extremely subject to selection and confirmation biases.
Right. So even though he is absolutely right, that the overwhelming majority of people who trans themselves have a bad childhood. because the way that he's framing it is, well, the lady at Starbucks told me, and I believe in God, therefore, it's true. And says, so where is the atheist compromise on the issue? The taking up the values that I speak about as an American, the American identity. These people not acting like a hedonist, not acting like a fucking degenerate. That's where the compromise comes from. What? I thought that was obvious. Hey, shout out to Guam Tech. Welcome to the party. Good to see ya.
Data to inform the conclusion is extremely subject to selection and confirmation biases. There's also no precise measurement or analysis of the factors in play in the phenomenon observed. This kind of evidence is not credible in the least.
And therefore, because you've given a bad form of evidence, I can completely brush aside the claim that you've made. So score 1 for the atheist leftist. Score 1 for the leftist atheist, because the Christian has fucked up the argument.
I should also point out that one of the anecdotes he cited doesn't support his conclusion in the first place.
Another young man trying to transition to become a woman was pretty much rejected by his father and was made fun of by Christians.
The American identity, believing in family, community, grace, gratitude, merit, capitalism, tradition, ritual, all of these things that build a good society. Those things, the things that you like about the Bible, because you don't follow the Bible completely, otherwise you'd be stoning adulterers in the street. So the things that you like in the Bible, those things, just take them away from the Bible so that Mav, the fucking a lesbian or whatever it was, doesn't have to be, well, why do I have to come back from God? You don't. You just have to be a good American. And again, or you can let the leftists win. Those are your options.
This trans woman was rejected and mocked by Christians because she...
Not being what do you mean? Well, okay, maybe. Accepting meaning not killing? Yes.
She was trans. This trans woman was rejected and mocked by Christians because she was trans. Even in Turek's story, her gender nonconformity preceded her abuse. This brings me to what scientific literature says on the subject. This study, published in 2015, looked at the relationship between sexual orientation, childhood gender nonconformity, and childhood...
Then you're doing just fine.
...sexual abuse in a sample of over 1,700 participants. Its literature review covers the well-established fact that non-heterosexual people face more childhood sexual abuse than heterosexual people. It also discusses a 2013 article which suggested that the causal relationship between abuse and sexual orientation may go both ways. Other researchers in this field doubt that study's validity, though, so more research on this was needed.
And again, so now when you actually get into the real numbers, the conclusion that we don't want kids transing themselves, and in a Christian community, we don't want people to be gay, that is undercut because, number one, you're folding the gayness into it. When you don't actually care, let me take that back. Maybe you do care if other people are doing shit in their own homes, but like, then you're not on my team. But the fact of the matter is, when you say, oh, so we have to accept gay people, like, absolutely. What do you mean? What would not accepting gay people look like? Accepting just means allowing to exist. So yes, we need, in order to be respectful to each other, then gay people are allowed to live. If that's not what you're talking about, I don't know what this sentence means.
This study found that the relationship between these factors goes like this. Non-heterosexuality comes first, and childhood sexual abuse follows. Non-heterosexuality is also often concurrent with childhood gender nonconformity, which childhood sexual abuse also follows. Basically, it's not abuse that makes you queer, it's being non-conforming in orientation and or gender that increases a child's risk of being abused.
Or the other way around.
So Frank Turek is wrong. He got the causal relationship here exactly backward. If we're to discuss Turek's moral wrongs, though, we should do so in light of what he says next.
And so you have to try and prayerfully see if you can help them address that.
Address it.
And
You must address it. This is why Christians lose. This is why Christians lose. Shout out to Unwanted Foe. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Good to see you, brother. Oh, come on with the struggle streaming. Give me that struggle stream.
Approve of them as a person because they're made in the image of God and valuable just like anybody else. Christ died for everyone. So just because you may disagree on their behavior and what they're doing doesn't mean you can't love them. In fact, to love them, you have to disagree with what they're doing. So I think you need to take a soft approach and try and befriend them. My friend befriends these young girls all the time, and even there's a guy doing this, and now one of them's doing a Bible study with her.
So his advice for showing love to an LGBT person is disagreeing with their behavior, meaning sexual orientation or gender expression, and befriending them in order to help them not do.
Address it. Shout out to David Banner. What is good? Welcome, welcome to the party.
Do that anymore. The issue here is sexual orientation and gender identity are not behaviors that can be purposely changed. Effectively, there is no accepting someone as a person while rejecting these characteristics because these characteristics are a permanent part of someone's person. Interventions designed to change or suppress sexual orientation or gender identity, including religious interventions, are known to be harmful. Further, refusal of peers and especially parents to affirm and support a queer person is a primary factor for predicting suicidality in a queer person.
So this is something we hear all the time, that the transes self-delete because they're not accepted in society, even though the numbers don't change very much after they transition. So let's see what he's going to pull up and how he works backwards from that conclusion to say, oh no, this is all good.
Of course, I have scholarly sources to back all of this up. I didn't just hear this from my friend who works at Starbucks. The American Medical Association has a handy issue brief for the general public on the subject of sexual orientation change efforts. They say, so-called conversion therapy or reparative therapy refers to any form of intervention, such as individual or group, behavioral, cognitive, or milieu/environmental operations that attempts to change an individual's sexual orientation or sexual behaviors.
Okay,
underlying these techniques is the assumption that any non-heterosexual, non-cisgender identities are mental disorders.
So let's stop there. The where is it? The underlying these techniques is the assumption that any non-heterosexual, non-cisgender identities are mental disorders. So first, again, the same exact thing that Frank Turek was doing on stage is smushing together the aspect of being a gay adult and transitioning at any age, but specifically with children. Those are two very, very, very different things. And so homosexuality has not been considered a mental disorder for a long time. But they only just changed gender dysphoria a few years ago. This is why you need to be precise.
And that sexual orientation and gender identity can and should be changed.
So what is Jay saying, wait a minute, if Jesus was a prophet in the Quran and son of God in the Bible, why was Jesus drinking alcohol when he turned? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Good question.
This assumption is not based on medical and scientific evidence. Professional consensus rejects pathologizing sexual and gender identities. In addition, empirical evidence has demonstrated a diversity of sexual and gender identities that are normal variations of human identity and expression, and not inherently linked to mental illness.
So again, a lot of what we're going to see, we have to look at the semantic obfuscation. This is the core of semantic obfuscation. If you remember Rand Paul grilling Dr. Fauci, or excuse me, Anthony Fauci, I will not refer to him as a doctor. If you remember him grilling him about gain of function research. Gain of function, you're doing gain of function, gain of function, gain of function. No, Senator Paul, you don't know what you're talking about. We're not doing gain of function research. And then he reads out exactly what is gain of function research. He's like, yeah, we're doing that, but that's not gain of function. We changed the definition to directed evolution. So when you, and of course, we have to lay the backdrop that of all the areas of science, that's psychology, and I have a degree in psychology. Psychology is the softest of all sciences. And so they will say like, oh, this is considered that, and this is accepted, and professional consensus and all this stuff. It's already been wokeified. What you're reading is the woke version of the science. This is what has come out after, and he specifically does something to show exactly why that is a problem as we go forward. But yeah, exactly. The professional consensus rejects pathologizing sexual and gender identities. Yeah, now, because you can lose your license for it. What about if you don't do that?
Variations of human identity and expression, and not inherently linked to mental illness.
You ain't wrong.
However, the unfounded misconception of sexual orientation and gender identity conversion persists among some health, spiritual, and religious practitioners. Now, I know that some viewers will respond, as others have before, that encouraging someone to adopt Christianity and simply resist their sinful gender-related and same-sex desires is not conversion therapy. To that I say,
because yeah, that's definitely conversion therapy.
Let's take another look at what that issue brief says. To the American Medical Association, sexual orientation change efforts include all efforts to change these characteristics in a person, even when they are practiced individually and focus on behavior cessation rather than a complete orientation change. Even this is not supported by scientific evidence and is considered harmful. It's also very clear that Frank Turek considers queer identities and expressions to be pathological, since they are usually caused by trauma in his mind. So the scientific consensus on this issue directly contradicts Turek's claims.
And there we go. There we go. The scientific consensus that the people who are paid to give us the consensus say that the stupid Christian thing that you said is wrong, even though the conclusion that it's a personal opinion that people should not be transing kids is the correct position. Good job, Christians. You fucked it up again.
The World Health Organization and the American Academy of Pediatrics, among countless other medical institutions, uphold this scientific consensus. Now to back up my statement about Turek's recommended approach being a contributing factor to suicidality in queer people. This study reports on a survey of trans people over the age of 16 in Ontario, Canada. As this table shows, those surveyed who reported the fewest suicide attempts were also those who reported the most parental and peer support.
So the most peer and parental support. So if we look back and we see there's what is the actual wording again?
In Ontario, Canada. As this table shows, those surveyed who reported the fewest suicide attempts were also those who reported the most parental and peer support.
So the idea that if you are doing something against your parents, then you're more likely to have a hard time. So if you are in a situation when we know, remember, let's not forget, he gets it to that at the end, but let's not forget the bombshell statistic that he's going to just brush off, that 80% of children, if left alone, will desist and stop this thought that they have gender dysphoria. So if you are going to support the transition, you may be better off within the context of being transition. But if you support the child instead of the transition, then you ultimately have an infinitely better chance of having an alive child.
For their gender identity. The authors state, while consideration of suicide did not differ significantly by level of social support.
Wait. I thought his whole argument was that the reason that people are self-deleting is because they're not accepted as trans. Yet he pulls up an article that says, while the consideration of self-deletion did not differ significantly by level of social support. Let's go on.
Those with high levels of social support were significantly less likely to attempt suicide than those with little support. 2%.
So let's also put a pin in that. So if you have peer support, then you're less likely to self-delete. He's going to make the argument later that there is no social contagion or anything. Well, again, within the same thing that he pulled up, that's what it says.
Versus 16%. Strong parental support for one's gender identity or expression was associated with significantly lower past year prevalences of both suicidal consideration and attempts. Further, in this system...
So again, the fact that your peers will give you a positive pressure or positive feedback, if we pair that with the fact that you probably didn't have friends to begin with, and that you saw other people getting positive feedback, so you did this, and you did it too, that would support the notion that there's a social contagion. In a film said, so would teachers, TikTok, etc., grooming children to be trans considered conversion therapy? It should be. It definitely should be. It said the reason people are self-deleting is because they cannot cope with making such a drastic decision. It didn't solve their crisis, and now they are permanently maimed. And so I'm not going to generalize that. Oh, I'm the wrong banner up here. You ain't earned that shit. Yeah, I don't know if that's a blanket statement, but there absolutely is validity here. And because there's no numbers on it, we have to throw away, says the leftist, we have to throw away our common sense and understanding to look at numbers from people who are ideologically bent already. They're already ideologically bent. Instead of a kid is trans, that means they have shitty parents. Simple as that. That's just not true. That's just not true. We have the people who have fought, all through the court systems to try to get to try to get control over what happens to their kid, and the government absolutely fucking says no. The government is giving the rights to the child to make the consent, and therefore the parents don't have them. It's not the parents, it's the government.
Systematic review, which is a review of a large body of research, the authors state that marginalization, isolation, rejection, and being victims of phobic behavior are linked to poor mental health outcomes such as depression, self-harm, and suicidality.
Sure. Yeah. No shit. And?
Young people who identify as a sexual or gender minority are a high-risk group who are developmentally vulnerable, and the family environment has been identified as an important protective factor against stressors and mental health problems in LGBTQIA+ youth.
So if you have a trans child, it's your fault because you have the ideas that you've had and you're not used to it.
For example, in Growing Up LGBT in America, a national survey of LGBTQIA+ youth in the USA, the most important factor identified as a problem in their lives was non-acceptance by families, 26%. A lack of family connectedness or acceptance compounds the issues that sexual and gender minority youth have at school, further hindering their learning. And suicidality in youth has been shown to be related to family connectedness, identified as the most protective factor against suicidal ideation and attempt.
So again, we are now talking about the notion that being accepted is the biggest factor, at least the biggest factor that we've talked about, then that will prevent your trans kid from self-deleting. That is the position. That because of the support or lack of support.
I think it's reasonable then to say that supporting queer identities is demonstrably better for the mental health and physical well-being of queer people than refusing to affirm them and making friends with them just to help them stop being queer. Remember how Frank Turek said that harming LGBT people is evil and wrong? Well, I think it's clear in light of the evidence and in accordance with Turek's own moral premise that doing what Turek says one should do in order to love LGBT people is evil and wrong. Frank Turek is directly encouraging his audience to harm LGBT people. That's it. That's the video. Actually, no, I'm not done. As you can see by the runtime of this video, there's a lot more to cover. See, as our friend Mav said, Frank Turek tours the US, writes books, and does media appearances spreading harmful misinformation about LGBT issues. His career is now just as much about this as it is spreading the love of Jesus.
And if that is the case, if we have people who are in the Christian realm talking about politics, and they're not well-versed enough in the difference between what they know about religion or atheism and politics, they're going to get it wrong. Both the atheist and the Christian are wrong here. This is a perfect example of how both sides get it wrong because of dogma.
So if you enjoyed or learned something from the first part of this video, you're in luck. There's a lot more. His claims actually get a lot worse. Moving on to a video on Christian apologist Sean McDowell's channel, where he interviews Dr. Frank Turek, PhD in ministry, about a topic he's ever so qualified to talk about, trans issues. These two make so many claims in this video, I can't respond to all of them here.
Yeah, they, if only it could be this simple. If only we had a collection of values that would make it so that we could live good lives and progress through society, even though we have different opinions and ideas. Kind of like the American identity, as described by the Indian Jesus.
So I'll focus on a few which represent common myths about trans psychology and healthcare. And to preempt the comments that will inevitably say, well, you're not qualified to talk about this, I actually do have a psychology degree, and I've studied human sexuality specifically at the...
I was going to say, oh, shit, me. Well, shit, me too, but not the human sexuality. I do have a degree in psychology.
The master's level. I'm relatively familiar with this topic. I also will actually provide scholarly sources for all of my claims, unlike Turek. The first...
Even though you do, though, you're still gonna be wrong.
Clip I'll show is long, so bear with me.
Why do you think there's been a rise in transgender identification?
So let's let this play out, and then we'll come back.
As you answer this, one of the responses people will give, and I've heard and tried to think about, is, well, maybe there's a rise in identification because finally there's cultural space for people to come out and identify as who they truly are.
Yeah, it is a complicated matter, but according to Abigail Schreier, who wrote the seminal book, Irresistible Damage, How the Transgender Craze is Seducing Our Daughters, she points out that, a decade or so ago, gender dysphoria was a condition that affected about 1 out of every 10,000 men. So men who thought that they were really women. But in the past decade or so, there's been almost a 5,000% increase of actually young girls claiming that they are boys.
Mm-hmm.
And according to her, and it seems to make sense, this is a social media contagion, Sean. This has passed almost entirely through the growth of social media. And she points out as well that there are other factors involved. In addition to social media, what do young people want more than anything? They just want to fit in, right?
Indeed, they do. Shout out to Unwanted Foe, getting us started with a $2 super chat. Said, feed the pup. Your wish is my command. That's right. Every single super chat comes with a treat for my co-host Morty. Thank you. All right, so I do want to just let them talk this out, and then we'll come back to it.
And she points out as well that there are other factors involved. In addition to social media, what do young people want more than anything? They just want to fit in, right? When you're a young person, you're a young teenager, you want to fit in. You want to be on the in group.
Like I said, trans is the new emo.
I'm still young, Frank, just for the record, but keep going.
What's the fastest and easiest way to fit in today's social media culture is to claim you're trans, because everybody will applaud. Anybody who says this is dangerous, don't go down this road, is going to be canceled or declared some kind of bigot. And it's also another way, because we were teenagers, Sean. You always wanted to stick it to your parents every now and then, right? It's a good way of doing it is to claim you're trans. So this is big.
Shout out to JL with the Canadian too. Thank you very much. Very, very much appreciated. Yeah, get it. Yummy. Thank you so very, very, very much. I really, really do appreciate you guys.
And almost entirely fueled by the ubiquity of social media.
I'm with you. What's interesting is there's always been a segment of the population, always at least going back, a century or so, that have genuine gender dysphoria. But this rapid onset gender dysphoria is emerging primarily in adolescent girls without any history of gender dysphoria.
Exactly.
That tells me there's some type of social contagion taking place here.
So we've got 3 major claims to respond to here. Rapid onset gender dysphoria exists. It's a growing social contagion among AFAB people, and transitioning is incentivized by an overwhelmingly positive social response.
So he just laid out his argument as to why the most important thing to the survival of a trans kid is the support that they get from their family and their peers. And now he's going to turn around and make the exact opposite argument that there is no social response. We are definitely not going down this road, but emo was everything. Maybe y'all are too young to remember, all right? But if you were alive in the early 2000s, emo was everything, all right? And no, emo is not the same thing as goth. Goth is a little more dark and metal and wearing white and brooding and whatever. And emo is more like, I don't know, being like, I don't know. It's a whole thing. It was good times. It was good times. All right. So those are the three major the three major claims that we're making here.
Social contagion.
Rapid onset gender dysphoria exists. It's a growing social contagion among AFAB people, and transitioning is incentivized by an overwhelmingly positive social response. Luckily, scientists and physicians have investigated these claims, and their research is publicly available. So let's see what they've found. We'll look at this study out of Sweden first. In its literature review, it covers previous research on the demographics of transgender people.
Guys, I really don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. Yes, I was emo as fuck. It was cool as shit. Everybody in my school who was cool was we didn't call it emo. I wasn't emo. I was a hardcore kid. But it's at this point, it doesn't matter. Moving on. Emo is cool for a lot of people. Maybe you were in some, I don't know, like weird place in the country. But if you look at any metrics of anything that just measures any popularity of any type of art, emo was everything. Moving on.
Is publicly available. So let's see what they found. We'll look at this study out of Sweden first. In its literature review, it covers previous research on the demographics of transgender people. Most studies on the prevalence of the transgender population examine differences by sex assigned at birth. Many have found a higher proportion of transgender women, this means people assigned male at birth, than transgender men. But the numbers have become more similar during the 2010s, particularly among younger generations. The gender difference is affected by how the population is measured. Indicative evidence suggests that transgender women are more likely to receive diagnoses and gender-affirming medical care than transgender men.
Right. So this is something that we expect to see with the social contagion thing of the of the month. As I tell you guys all the time, when I was in middle school, it was girls having an eating disorder. Every other girl had an eating disorder. They were binging and purging and restricting and doing this and that. Then when we got a little bit older and the emo stuff was around, it was the self-harm, and you would take a pair of scissors and make just enough of a scrape anywhere that would be dangerous so that you could get attention but that's also a real thing. It's the social contagion. It is for attention.
Women are more likely to receive diagnoses and gender-affirming medical care than transgender men.
Oh yeah, point being that this is the same thing.
While the ratios are more even in studies that rely on self-identification and include gender non-conforming or non-binary identities. So, have we seen the number of AFAB people identifying as trans and non-binary?
So when he says AFAB, I need to write this down. AFAB and AMAB. So AFAB and AMAB. So it's you're looking at the second letter, AFAB. So I'll do it like this. I'll do AFAB and AMAB, which means assigned female at birth. So we're just talking about men and women. This is why we have to do this, because they create this language that now we don't understand what it is that they're talking about. When he's trying, the number of AFAB people defying this and that, and then the fact is that before we used to see that it was overwhelmingly men that would transition into women. And it was older men. And now that it's become popular, it's teenage girls.
Grow in the last decade? Yes, but really only to the degree where the number has finally caught up to that of people who are assigned male at birth. When the authors of this study analyzed the administrative data covering all residents of Sweden from 1973 to 2020, they found the following. While the rates increase over time for all age groups, the upward trend is starkest.
I think that's already happened.
For transgender men aged 15 to 19. The increase for this group was particularly rapid from 2013 to 2016, but subsequently slowed down and reversed after 2018.
So let's take a look at what we got here as he's talking.
Men, the rates in Sweden time for all.
So this is for Sweden.
All age groups.
Women. Yeah. So we have women with just the diagnosis and the men with diagnosis versus the men who actually had the legal change versus the men that had the legal change. So in in all these years prior to the spike, we see that that back here it's all men, and the men is starting to go down. But with women, it's increasing. It's increasing.
The upward trend is starkest for transgender men aged 15 to 19. The increase for this group was particularly rapid from 2013 to 2016, but subsequently slowed down and reversed after 2018. For transgender women, we find an increase in younger age groups through 2014, but the rates are quite stable thereafter. The researchers analyzed their data to see if COVID-19 related factors accounted for the
Have a good one, David.
recent plateau in these rates, but they found that they did not. Figure S1 in the supplementary material shows that the reversal in diagnosis rates began before the pandemic, with the largest decline in the second half of 2019, and mostly affected transgender men in younger age groups. We conclude that the shifting rates are unrelated to COVID-19 and reflect other processes that have primarily affected the transition rates of younger transgender men. So yes, in Sweden, there has been growth in the number of young people transitioning, but the rate has either steeply declined or plateaued depending on demographic factors in the last several years.
Notice how he'll use Sweden, a country that no longer allows children to transition, for a political argument in America. Well, is all of this media that we see pushing this stuff going on in Sweden? I mean, I don't know, actually. I would assume not, given the fact that they've banned it. But you can't compare, especially with healthcare stuff. You can't compare Sweden and America. But it's the science, right? It's the science. Trans men means women who became men or men who became women. So shout out to Peter Boghossian. If you have not seen my interview with him, please definitely go check that out. But he likes to just think that trans equals fake. So just fake. So a fake man is a woman.
This is not consistent with the hypothesis of a recent social contagion disproportionately affecting one sex.
Except also, it definitely does affect the support that these people have. It totally affects that more than anything else.
Interestingly, it does actually compare relatively well to that graph which LGBT allies like to bring up.
Where have you guys seen this before? That's right. Lance from the Surfs brought this onto Timcast in the same stream where he was talking about forced birth and you shouldn't have an abortion or anything, this and that and the other, but you definitely can't smoke meth because it would hurt the baby. He printed this out. And so the argument is that because left-handedness was looked at as a bad thing in America at one point, only 5% of people were left-handed, and that apparently went down as people got more whatever about that. It was like that was just what you did. And then once people realized that, like, oh, that's just a thing, then we started seeing a lot more left-handed people, but it topped out at about 12% because only 12% of the population was ever left-handed. And so no matter how much acceptance you're not going to get anymore. That's the point there, that that trans is essentially the same thing. However, we don't see this trend. We see going from here. It starts here and then it just goes up. It's just because they both go up doesn't mean anything. It means nothing, actually.
It does actually compare relatively well to that graph which LGBT allies like to bring up, where left-handedness dramatically increased as stigma decreased and then plateaued. But of course, I still have a lot more to cover. A 2022 study in the Journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics looked into the subject in the United States, surveying.
All right, now at least we're talking in the U.S. now. It says, yes, funny how when they push to trans in Sweden gets reduced, so do the transing. Can't make this shit up, guys. You cannot make this shit up.
In the Journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics looked into this subject in the United States, surveying a large number of adolescents in 2017 and 2019. A couple of initialisms you should know as I read this. TGD means transgender and gender diverse. AMAB means assigned male at birth, and AFAB means assigned female at birth.
So again, if we go through, TGD just means trans, AMAB means man, and AFAB means woman.
Turns out these are not just ideological insider lingo.
Projection! They absolutely are. Nobody outside of whatever the fuck this is uses AFAB or AMAB. These are absolutely ideological insider lingo. Holy projection. Holy projection.
These are actually very useful terms in actual medical research.
Oh, so so again, we bring up the food pyramid, because if it's an actual medical research, then it cannot be biased. It cannot be biased. Like, This is what I mean. When you have an a priori position that, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to look, and the scientists have it right. This is where you get. This is where you get. Jail said, I thought BFAB was some music reference. I mean, it would sound better.
Which is why a lot of people use them now. The discussion.
No, see, it goes the other way around. Because a lot of people use them now you get actual articles that look like this. Somebody try to fucking read what this says. This is not fucking English. The fact that you think that this is normal English already shows that you are part of the cult. It already shows. If you showed this to 100 people just out on the street, how many of them do you think would know what this means? So let's try. Usually a national sample of United States adolescents, we found that more trans men adolescents than trans female adolescents in 2017 and 2019. Additionally, the total percentage of transgenders were 2.4% in 2017 and 1.6 in 2019. This decrease in overall percentage of adolescents identified is incongruent with an rapid onset gender dysphoria hypothesis that posits a social contagion. So all of the studies that said that used normal language, that said that we had like a 20% increase. Even Bill Maher, the fucking will follow any left-leaning bullshit that comes across his desk. In 2030, 50% of us are going to be trans. So you have science over here and you have science over here. So you can't have the science because the science conflicts with itself.
Reads as follows. Using a national sample of United States adolescents, we found that there were more TGD AMAB adolescents than TGD AFAB adolescents
This is not insider lingo.
in both 2017 and 2019. Additionally, the total percentage of TGD adolescents in our sample decreased from 2.4% in 2017 to 1.6% in 2019. This decrease in the overall percentage of adolescents identifying as TGD is incongruent with a rapid onset gender dysphoria hypothesis that posits social contagion.
Wonderful. Said instead of calling it being terminally online, this is more a case of terminally California mindset. Yep. So transgender. I think the actual thing is transgender or gender. It means trans. I think. You ain't wrong. You ain't wrong. Tom said the argument for Sweden was that it was the politicians forcing laws that pushed against the trans community. How dare they? Except for when England's scientific community sealed the deal with their students on the harm it caused to children. Shout out to the NHA or to NIH for that one, but not COVID. So what you're saying is the NIH isn't the science. They might get some things wrong and some things right because they're using a process called science. And so there's no such thing as the science. Gotcha. He films it, citing a study from the same folks that said 6-month-old children should be injected with an experimental mRNA gene therapy and congruent boosters. Already ideologically captured. And then we have all of these acronyms. This isn't jargon. Yeah, it is, dude. Yeah, it is. Shout out to all of Manchester, England. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party.
The AMAB-AFAB ratio still in
Oh my God, the AMAB-AFAB ratio.
favor of more TGD AMAB participants for both years shifted slightly toward TGD AFAB participants from 2017 to 2019.
So what that actually says is the male to female ratio still in favor of transgender males participants for both years shifted slightly towards transgender females from 2017 to 2019, just like I said.
Importantly, this change was due to a reduction in the number of TGD AMAB participants,
meaning the number of men who wanted to trans themselves went down in comparison. It's a ratio in comparison to the number of TGD AFAB or trans female participants. Exactly what we said.
rather than an increase in TGD AFAB participants, again arguing against a notion of social contagion with unique susceptibility among AFAB youth. Moreover, we found that TGD youth were more likely to be victims of bullying and to have attempted suicide when compared with cisgender youth, which is...
And again, so, okay, fine. We found, moreover, that transgender youth were more likely victims of bullying than cisgender youth. Correlation is not causation. Perhaps the same reason that they're getting bullied is the same reason that they want to be trans. Because they are fucking losers who don't fit in. I'm sorry, but most kids are fucking losers. I was a fucking loser. You were probably a fucking loser. Maybe 3 or 4 of you were one of the popular kids, but, you know, obviously we don't give a shit about that now. But when you're 14, that's the end all be all. But that goes against the idea that there's a social contagion. That goes against the idea that, despite the fact that I just said the largest indicator was social support from family and that makes a lot of sense. Both from their parents and their peers, has nothing to do with it when I wanted to.
Is consistent with past studies. Our additional analyses reveal that TGD youth experience significantly higher rates of bullying than cisgender sexual minority youth, who themselves experience significantly higher rates of bullying when compared with cisgender heterosexual youth. These exceptionally high rates of bullying among TGD youth are inconsistent with the notion that young people come out as TGD either to avoid sexual minority stigma or because being TGD will make them more popular among their peers.
No, it doesn't. It just does not. It just doesn't. Again, take it back to emo. Take it back to emo. If I'm some loser kid who has no personality, and then I see all the kids in my school, they're wearing My Chemical Romance and Census Fail, and you know they're dyeing their hair and they're painting their nails and they're looking cool. The notion that would not have an effect on me wanting to be part of that. Now, am I saying that because you were an emo kid, you had this, that, or the other? No. But that's the argument that they're trying to make. Or actually the inverse. They're trying to make the inverse. That because you are trans, you could not have had a bad life. That doesn't make any sense.
Both of which are explanations that have recently been propagated in the media. As if that wasn't bad enough for Sean and Frank's claims, there's still more research that debunks them. In the Journal of Pediatrics, we find a 2021 study directly investigating the notion of the supposedly contagious rapid onset gender dysphoria. If the rapid onset gender dysphoria hypothesis indeed characterizes a distinct clinical phenomenon, and these youth access referrals to hormone suppression or gender-affirming hormones, then we would expect to see differentiation within clinical samples between those with more recent or rapid onset versus more remote knowledge regarding their gender. Based on the published hypotheses, we would expect more recent gender knowledge to be associated with self-reported mental health measures, mental health and neurodevelopmental disability diagnoses, behaviors consistent with maladaptive coping, e.g. self-harm, support from...
Hold up.
...diagnosis.
So what it says here is that we would expect the more recent gender knowledge to be associated with self-reported mental health measures. But wait a minute. We've just established that we are no longer calling what used to be mental health or a mental illness. So just like Fauci, it's only not that because you changed the definition. It's still that. You just changed the wording. Semantic obfuscation.
Behaviors consistent with maladaptive coping, e.g. self-harm, support from online and or transgender friends, but not parents, and lesser gender dysphoria. We aim to test these hypotheses. And what did they find? We did not find support within a clinical population for a new etiological phenomenon of rapid onset gender dysphoria during adolescence.
Well, that's the point, Jay, is that they're not getting reports of mental illnesses because they're categorizing what was a mental illness as just part of life. Well, that's just part of life. This is how they twist the words to make it fit whatever they want. Shout out to Poon Cooter. Welcome to the party.
Among adolescents under age 16 years seen in specialized gender clinics, associations between more recent gender knowledge and factors hypothesized to be involved in rapid onset gender dysphoria were either not statistically significant or were in the opposite direction to what would be hypothesized.
Well, actually, not being trans makes you more likely to end yourself. What?
So the data did not support the ROGD hypothesis. Check out what the authors say next. This putative phenomenon, ROGD, was posited based on survey data from a convenient sample of parents recruited from websites, and may represent the perceptions or experiences of those parents rather than of adolescents, particularly those who may enter into clinical care. Yeah, what proponents of the
Shout out to Zippy the Strange, or Zippy DSM Lee with the $2 Rumble chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And of course, that makes you the new co-sponsor of the stream. Thank you, thank you, thank you so very, very much, sir.
The rapid onset gender dysphoria hypothesis rarely mention, or perhaps don't even know, is that the study that proposed the idea never directly assessed any trans individuals in the first place. Author Lisa Littman surveyed parents of gender nonconforming adolescents on their children's development of gender dysphoria and social influences.
Yeah, exactly. Self-reported, the most reliable method to get the results you want. And self-reporting what? Self-reporting what? So, like, if they are, this could very easily, when they say there's no, there's no more mental illness or mental health issues, whatever the case, the wording was. If they ask, have you had any new mental health issues? No. You just stuck with the depression and the anxiety and the bipolar and the things that you already had? Okay, no new mental disorders. You have to understand that just because they're doctors, just because they wear lab coats, just because they're from an organization, just because they're a .org, just because they did a study, it doesn't mean anything. You can find studies for anything everywhere that support both sides of every single thing that you can think of. There are studies about a flat Earth. I hope we all agree that the Earth is not flat.
Informing adolescents on their children's development of gender dysphoria and social influences. She recruited these parents using websites Fourth Wave Now, Transgender Trend, and Youth Trans Critical Professionals.
And I'm sure that Fourth Wave Now, Transgender Trend, and Youth Trans Critical Professionals have no incentive to find things that are in favor of the LGBT bullshit.
Come on, man.
You want conspiracy? You want conspiracy theorists? Make videos like this. You want people who were of science, who completely changed their way of life because of the science? Well, not the science, because of science. I was that person. And so was he. But now, there's just, it's so frustrating because there's never a stop. So many of these atheist YouTubers like myself came from religion. It's not that we just grew up without a religion and, it just wasn't a part of our lives. Most of the people who want to speak out are because, we felt like we were lied to. And so there's never a question. There's never a question of, am I falling into a cult again? You were already part of, I think he was a Mennonite or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's some super culty part of the, it might have been the Mormon, it was, but whatever it was, it's super culty. And so he left and started this channel. And obviously he's very intelligent. Obviously he's well-read to be able to find all this stuff. But the problem is that if you don't understand the issue, the politics of the issue, then you're just going to follow this bullshit. Reported from parents on websites. Very critical. Yeah, exactly. I mean, come on. Shout out to Camo Shorts. Or just said, I am a woman, but I was born a man, and I am well hung. There you go. There you go, ladies. Or gentlemen, whatever you're into. Let me get that heart, Virgil. What's good?
Using websites Fourth Wave Now,
Hey, shout out to Brandon Worrell. Said, you willing to bring someone on that can debunk you about this LGBT bullshit, as you call it? Abso-fucking-lutely. Send me an email at theindianjesusofficial@gmail.com, and we will get you up here as soon as we can.
Transgender Trend, and Youth Trans Critical Professionals, which are groups where participants already believe that being trans is a social trend and advocate for legislation against access to trans healthcare.
Shout out to Mike W. Welcome to the party. Said, atheists who leave Christianity deconstruct their Christianity for some reason. They think they also have to deconstruct being conservative. I think I agree with you. I think I think I understand what you're saying. But are you saying that they can they deconstruct Christianity because they were in Christianity, and so they think they can? Thank you for the heart, Virgil. So they can deconstruct conservatism even though they're not in conservatism. Is that what you're saying?
Trend and advocate for legislation against access to trans healthcare. Basically, this study just established that 256 parents perceived their child's gender dysphoria to be little more than a trend. This does not give any kind of clinical or scientific validity to the notion that rapid onset gender
It doesn't give any scientific anything to anything.
Dysphoria exists, much less explains the previously growing numbers of people identifying as trans or non-binary. This study has been extremely heavily criticized by researchers in this field.
For good reason.
So much that the American Psychological Association,
the American Psychological Association, the least corrupt medical scientific association out there,
and 61 other healthcare providers organizations signed a letter in 2021 denouncing the validity of rapid onset gender dysphoria as a clinical diagnosis. To put the final nail in the coffin for the claim that people claim to be trans for positive attention, remember that this study found exceptionally high rates of bullying among TGD youth. Additionally, transgender people are over 4 times more likely than cisgender people to be victims of violent crime, according to the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law. This directly contradicts the trans for positive.
No, I do agree with you though. That Christian, I mean, I don't think there needs to be a I think Christians and atheists, there's good Christians and there's good atheists and there's bad Christians and bad atheists. But the woke ideology is definitely a bad thing. But I think that we could definitely say woke ideology versus the anti-woke is a thing. But I don't accept that as a dichotomy, because the fact is, yeah, there's a lot of you guys who believe in Christianity and you like it, and I think it's stupid. And there's a bunch of atheists out there that I would much rather hang out with you guys than them. Mike said, I'm saying that usually Christians are conservative, and since they deconstruct, so when you're saying deconstruct, do you mean like usually deconstruct means to break down the aspects and talk about the, like kind of we're deconstructing this video. So do you mean like deconstruct meaning like moving away from? Because that would make more sense. I'm just saying that Christians are usually Christians are conservative, and since they deconstruct from Christianity, they also think that being conservative is also wrong, because now their new peers are on the left. Well, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. I mean, the over Jesusification. You need God, okay? It's God or nothing. If you don't got God, then you ain't gonna. That shit is absolutely why so many atheists are on the left. Absolutely. Brandon says, here it is in a nutshell. I am a normal biological male, but I have cerebral palsy. So because of my brain, everything I am is different. Okay. I'm sorry to hear that you have cerebral palsy, but I'm not sure how that is relevant to the trans stuff. But let's dive back in.
Than cisgender people to be victims of violent crime, according to the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law. This directly contradicts the trans for positive attention narrative. So yeah, if we're to get back to Sean and Frank.
So again, he's just going to act like there's no such thing as a Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney doesn't exist. What was the other one? Jeffree, not Jeffree Star. The one was like, we are coming for your kids. The guy, no beard, but, stubble and, clear AGP, clear no desire to live life as a woman, which I think is wild anyway. But hey, whatever floats your boat. But that's not what that was. One of us said rapid onset trans, aka male prisoner wants to go to a female only prison instead of a male prison. Yup. But that doesn't happen. Fast forward 6 months, they're gonna be, yeah, that does happen, but it's actually the best thing that you've finally been able to accept your true identity. And even though you got arrested, we're gonna celebrate you. But yeah, no, there's no aspect of celebration and good social feedback with this. Not at all. According to Trans for America. Any film said, good thing we didn't treat being goth like that, or we'd have a bunch of vampires running around, or at least people with their skin stained pale, eyes yellow, and their teeth shaved with fangs. Bingo. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good thing we didn't, and to take it on a more serious thing, just like I said with the social contagion of eating disorders, it's a good fucking thing we didn't tell every girl who said, oh, I'm so fat, who had body dysmorphia, which is a real thing, and we treated it as such. It's a good thing we didn't tell them, yeah, here's some diet pills. Because they would have died. They would have died. The red dot. Brandon said, you can be a biological male, but for some reason have the brain of a female. Biology is weird. Okay. What does that mean? Because if you are a biological male, then by definition, the brain that is in your body is a male brain. Male or female brain is just denoted by the body which it's in.
They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
Projection. That one was a chef's kiss.
To Sean and Frank, they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. I guess it turns out that getting a PhD in
I mean, you know what? I'm gonna take that back because he's not wrong. He's not wrong. They don't know much about what they're talking about. The thing is, you don't need to know a lot about what you're talking about to say, oh, this thing is clearly bad. The way that they talk about it is very bad because they don't know what they're talking about. That doesn't mean that they're wrong.
Christian apologetics doesn't involve learning how to read scientific articles. That's a shocker. You know what I'm about to say, though, right?
Well, it's the science, so,
Yeah, this is not where they're spreading a misinformation ends.
Hooray, more content. You guys are probably bored by now, right?
As I mentioned earlier, why, when our psychology and our biology are mismatched, we think the solution is to change our biology. I mean,
yeah, that's an axiomatic. Why do you need a paper to know that that is a good question? That is a good philosophical question. If we see that there's something wrong, then why is our immediate solution to change the biology when in no other area of medicine or philosophy do we I don't think that's a thing. I reject the premise that you can be born as a male with a female brain. That's like saying, I bought an Apple, but it's a Samsung. Like by definitionally, that's what it is. That's a terrible analogy, but you know what I mean? To say a male brain just means it's a brain that's in a body of a male. So if it's in the body of a male, then how is it a female brain? What does that mean?
and our biology are mismatched, we think the solution is to change our biology. I mean, why would you change your biology? We don't do this with parallel conditions. And probably the closest parallel condition would be anorexia.
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? Because I told you. And when did
I know all, guys. I know all. I memorized every word of this when I watched it at 2x speed, skipping through 3 days ago. I memorized it all just so I could seem cool. Anyway, Gontex said, changing your mentality is infinitely better for you than changing your biology. Bingo. Unless we're talking about working out, which I definitely need to do. But I mean, you know, I think changing your mentality is a good first step in changing your biology in that way. So I'm going to say, hell fucking yeah. Dilly. And I just don't get it. Why do you? Well, they didn't read scientific papers, so you can't. I can't answer that question, but I don't have to because I read a scientific paper.
What?
That's essentially his position so far. But let's see.
Parallel. You know, when somebody is anorexic, and they say, "But you know, I'm overweight," you would not say, "You know, you're right. Let me give you liposuction." You would say, "Dear, your mind's playing tricks on you. You're a dangerously underweight. We need to get you nourishment. We
need to get you nourishment because we care, because we want you to be better." And so even though it's mean, even though it may not feel nice to be told the truth shall set you free. Zuby said, rather than be stuck on gender, humans love forcing people into boxes. Shout out to Pitt's take. That's what he was saying. I think humans are complex, if he goes on to say, but there are only two genders. But humans force who can act and dress as a gender. Forget politics. Just follow the logic. You do not need to argue sin, argue how difficult some processes are, and only argue sin if people want to enter your religion. I like that. Yeah, I mean, the word and the concept of talking about sin in the context of politics should never happen. It should never happen. If something is a sin and you don't want it to happen as a Christian in a political context, you just need to talk about why it is negatively affecting society. And if it's not, then you suck it up. Because we are not a communist authoritarian nation that everybody's going to conform to the same thing. Comes to get female brains in male bodies are a thing, then wouldn't all gay men be women? What? Gay? I mean, I don't know. I maybe. I think that's what they would say. Certainly the what was the Andrew Tate example that Lance answered? Would you rather have Megan Fox with a dick or Hulk Hogan with a vag? We are definitely making that poll. You have to take one. Which one you taking? Hulk Hogan?
Not going to get you liposuction. Yet, why would we say we're going to cut off perfectly healthy sex organs when somebody has a delusion, a mental condition that is causing them to believe something they are not? Another example would now be the transabled. I don't know if you've heard of this recently, Sean.
Oh God, the transabled. This is the slippery slope. It's a slippery slope that when you say that biological reality doesn't matter, but psychological reality matters more, you're going to get transableism, you're going to get transageism, and it all leads down back to the consent that children will now be allowed to give to adults to change their bodies, to whatever. I mean, that's it. That's what they want. And Matsu9 said the kid may have left Christianity, but all he did was substitute one God for another. Science is now God. Yeah, and this is just way too many atheists. But I will blame the Christians for this. I will blame the Christians for this. By forcing our political context to be on the backdrop of your religion, you've created the possibility for us to get this far away from the values that we all generally agree on. Because, as you said, science is now God. To them, at least. He said, I'll take the D. Any film said, not 100% on this, but I'm pretty sure there's a psychological difference between a male brain and a female brain. And they never found a physiological they've never found a physiological female brain and a male body or vice versa. Yeah, I don't know what that, like, again, I'm science says that that men only have one penis, but if you go to the weird side of the internet, that's not always true. I mean, fair enough, but that just means it's bimodal. So the exception does not break the rule. The exception, in fact, makes the rule. So if we have men and we have women and we have intersex people who fall in between, they fall in between the binary. So there's an overlap, but there's still only two categories. There's male and there's female. You could be a little bit of both, where you're in the middle, you're hermaphroditic, you've got Klinefelter, whatever the fuck it's called. But there's still, those are exceptions to the rules. Those are not, those are anomalies. Those are not different genders. Those are defects. That's not how humans are supposed to be. So the science says that men only have two hands, but you go to India and you see some motherfucker with a shit. That doesn't mean that no longer do men only have two arms. That means that that one person is an anomaly. Comments to say all gay men are actually women goes against their own belief system. Gay people are a protected class, and to say anything needs to change about them is akin to violence. Funny how that works. Yep. Hey, shout out to Unwanted Fall with another $2. Said paying this to avoid answering that nasty question. Yeah. Works for me. Works for me. And of course, that makes you the new sponsor of the stream. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, sir. All right, let's dive back in here.
A mental condition that is causing them to believe something they are not. Another example would now be the transabled. I don't know if you've heard of this recently, Sean, but there are people out there who are claiming that they're disabled even though everything's working perfectly fine. And so some of them want to have their limbs removed so they can be disabled. Now, what doctor would say, you're right. You are disabled. Let me take off your arm or let me take off your leg.
You would lose your license. So it's almost like doctors could be, doctors are doctors. They're people, just like any other group. You're going to have crazy ones. You're going to have liberal ones. You're going to have conservative ones. You're going to have Christian ones. You're going to have atheist ones. So it's almost like if we incentivize keeping your license by doing one thing, that we can expect that the doctors who want to keep their license will do that thing.
Any doctor would be sued for malpractice if they ever did that, rightfully so. And
okay, but if they didn't, then I guarantee you could find a doctor that would cut off your leg, and that doesn't make it a good thing. But if it's a penis, it doesn't matter.
Yet we're also saying, well, let's cut off perfectly healthy sex organs because someone has this this gender dysphoria condition. That's not the solution. You don't treat a mental condition with surgery in most cases. You treat it with psychiatry.
And he even gave the caveat, in most cases, in the overwhelming majority of most cases. Now, I did not expect this. But 75% of you are gay. 75% of you are gay. Hulk Hogan with a patch, or is the woman. Megan Fox is a man. Y'all want to fuck a man? That's cool, but it's gay.
A mental
anybody out there, we're just having fun.
Condition with surgery in most cases. You treat it with psychiatry or counseling or prayer. That's what we need to do.
Well, we used to say counseling, but now the counselors are the demons.
This is the kind of argument one makes when they're ignorant of the body of research on trans healthcare and projection. This is the kind of argument that somebody makes when they're ignorant on the actual political position on trans healthcare. Unfamiliar with how clinicians classify psychological conditions, Turek presents anorexia nervosa and obscure cases of so-called transableism as parallel to gender dysphoria. But actual medical professionals who study this, actual medical professionals as opposed to the ones that agree with me or don't agree with me, anorexia is treated with various forms of
That's not the point, bro. Right over his head. Right over his head. You like, obviously they're not treated the same way. They're not the same thing. But they have the same underlying problem that your psychology and your biology do not match. So just because we have different ways of treating, and let's go through it. Let's go through it and show how this is exactly the same as trans, and we should do. I don't even know what the argument is. I don't even know what the argument. Professionals who study this don't. Anorexia is treated with various forms of talk therapy in combination with drugs like SSRIs, along with medically supervised nutritional rehabilitation. And that's because these treatments have been shown to effectively treat it. The American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual also classifies body dysmorphia and eating disorders separately from gender dysphoria. So the people, it's counted as, it's so circular. The people who said it counts as a disease said it counts as a disease, so it counts as a disease. So the people who said this doesn't count as a disease, doesn't count as a disease because they said it doesn't count as a disease.
What?
It's the ultimate level. It's the ultimate level of appeal to authority. It's really, really sad. Hey, shout out to Tyler, the GOAT. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Thank you, thank you, thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate that. I am glad you are here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How old is this kid? My age. He's, I don't know his exact age, but right around my age. Also classifies body dysmorphia and eating disorders separately from gender dysphoria because they are assessed and treated substantially differently. Meanwhile, right. Why do we think they are treated substantially differently? Maybe because one is being treated appropriately and one is not.
While the extremely rare phenomenon of transableism, or as some have unofficially called it,
Again, well, it's rare now. Being trans was rare. And you're like, well, only this many people. Everybody making fun of Mount Walsh for overestimating. It's not that many people. It's only this many trans people. Oh my God. But now here we are. And you've moved the Overton window. So yes, it may not be a lot right now, but you are pushing for more of it. Your ideology is pushing more of it. That is why we have a problem with it. Again, demonstrating your ignorance of the argument. You may be amazing at understanding the science, but you don't understand the argument. And therefore, you are making a fool of yourself.
Body integrity identity disorder is not.
This is how all leftists argue. Look, that guy said it's right, so I'm going to say what he said, so I'm right. That is leftism. Somebody with a letter after their name told me a thing, and therefore it must be right. And if you disagree, well, they're the ones with the. Do you have a degree? And in certain cases, yes, that's relevant. But even in this, where we are talking about medical science, there is a difference between what the science says and what the political argument is. And even if we want to concede all the ground to say that, okay, there is zero science. This is not the case. But I'm just saying, let's pretend, in pretend world, we give them all the ground that there is zero harm, scientifically, not zero harm, but statistically, there is zero harm. So it's like, let's say it's 5% of kids or something like that. To say then that because scientifically it doesn't automatically lean to bad results, then you're not allowed to have negative opinions about it. That would be the same as saying it's illegal to not only to smoke weed, because alcohol is, we went through prohibition with that, but that to even say that you like it would be a bad and shameful thing. Yeah, the extensive body of research on trans healthcare that is dated from 2017 to today. I'm starring this. Keep this in mind. Because when we get to the desistance argument, he brushes it off like it's nothing. And I want you to remember that you said this. And I want the rest of you to remember that Andy Film said this.
Or as some have unofficially called it, body integrity identity disorder, is not in the DSM-5
body identity integrity disorder
or any other diagnostic manual of psychological conditions that I'm aware of.
Well, it's not in the book, so it's not in the book.
It has not been extensively studied, and there's no generally accepted evidence-based treatment.
Therefore, I can just assign whatever conclusion to it I want, because there's no science. There's nobody to tell me the thing, so I can tell my own thing.
However, a quick search of transableism does reveal exclusively right-wing media, which often positions itself against LGBT rights.
Again, why do you think that is? So we have people actually choosing to identify as handicapped and chopping their fucking bodies off, and liberal media is not even talking about it. But no, Fox News is the problem. Fox News is the problem for reporting the news. This is not scientific. This is not a scientific mind. Just because you're reading science doesn't make you scientific. Talk about anecdotal. Well, there's 3 articles. It's almost like the liberal media doesn't want to report on this. It's almost like this is actually happening, but the mainstream media is choosing to ignore it to make you pretend that it's not happening, so that in 9 months, when it's all over the place, you have to switch up and be like, oh, actually, no, being transabled is a good thing. Put fucking money on it. Put fucking money on it. I really do think that's gonna be the last stage of it. I hope. I don't really know what else you could do, but I think the transableism is where normal people, when it starts to really pick up, Because again, what is this all about? This is all about attention. Healthy people don't do this shit. And that's not I'm not throwing shade. It's not bad or immoral rather to not have a good life or not be mentally sound or whatever it is. But no one who has a functioning mind does this stuff. But he just wants to poo-poo it off because the liberal media, my gods, they don't report on it. So it's not happening. And this is the smart one. This is the smart one who's pulling up sources. What do you think the dumbass is? What do you think they're thinking? We're doing a deep dive on the replication crisis in the sciences, in particular sociology. I have not, but I definitely could. And I take back before what I said about psychology being the softest science. Sociology is the softest science. Do they even count it as a science? Do they even call sociology a soft science? I know it's got the ology, but do they even consider it? Because it's really just not anything. It's just like, here are some trends. Don't have anything to do about it, but this stuff is happening. That's sociology.
Does reveal exclusively right-wing media, which often positions itself against LGBT rights, peddling sensationalistic stories about it, comparing
You could be whatever you want in today's America.
it to the rather well-studied gender nonconformity. It seems like Frank Turek might be getting his information about the classification and treatment of various psychological conditions from clickbait news articles.
Even if that's the case, that has nothing to do with the core of his argument. That only further goes to say that you don't really need a scientific journal to tell you that chopping off the genitals of children is not a good thing for society.
Would it be fair to say that transphobia is a social media contagion? Because this is at least one strong data point for that. So clinical understanding and classification of something like gender dysphoria has changed over the years.
Yeah, I definitely want to look into that.
When I began my psychology degree in 2012, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual was on its fourth.
So I graduated in 2012. So he at least 4 years younger than me, but right around my age.
Edition and contained diagnostic criteria for gender identity disorder. By my first summer semester in 2013, the DSM-5 debuted.
So they changed it.
In this new edition, gender identity disorder was eliminated and replaced by gender dysphoria. This new classification contains different criteria, and the DSM now explicitly states gender nonconformity is not in itself a mental disorder.
So remember, we said there's no reports of this or that or that or that, because they said that the mental disorder is no longer a mental disorder. So if we're trying to measure a thing and you change what that thing is, then the tools we have to measure the thing no longer will measure the thing. It's just that simple. And so you can, again, it comes down to this. The DSM-5 articulates explicitly that gender nonconformity is not in and of itself a mental disorder. So you either believe them because they said it, or you understand that our institutions have been corrupted. And we're conspiracy theorists. It's one or the other. It's one or the other. And may I remind you at this point of the food pyramid.
Clinicians today do not consider gender variance a pathology.
Yeah, because they'd lose their license if they did.
And will often specify dysphoria is from the distress caused by the body and mind not aligning and or societal marginalization of gender variant people.
You're trying to tell me what was it? What was the word? So societal marginalization of gender variant people is an objective scientific term. Get the fuck out of my face. Get the fuck out of my face. It's a well-studied gender ideology, as in more studied than the hundreds of thousands of years of experience of normal genders. Yeah, bro. Because it's newer. New is always better.
So like I said, people who are actually qualified, unlike Frank Turek, do not
projection. Frank Turek is absolutely qualified to have an opinion on a political issue? Is he very, 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 very bad at putting the conclusion of that position out there by wrapping up in religion? Of course, that's what Christians do. That's what Christians do. They take conservatism and they filter it through the meat grinder of religion, and whatever comes out the other side is still essentially the same thing, but doesn't really hold up. This is maybe he's not qualified to give a scientific lecture on the statistics of transing children. That does not mean he is not qualified to have a political position on anything. MS9 said the DSM-4 also decided to do away with Asperger's as a diagnosis and lumped it in with autism. While it did help Asperger's kids get the services they needed, it hurt people with severe autism. Yeah, and now autism is literally a joke. I mean, I don't mind. I don't care because we're not allowed to say retard anymore. But like, that's the new word. And so all we've done is mix around the words, confuse a bunch of people, and change fucking nothing except for the worse. So this guy would probably say Jordan Peterson isn't qualified to diagnose mental disorders too. I think he would. I think he has said something like that. MX9 goes on to say awareness was raised. True. But now if a person with autism needs or will need supervision for life, it's harder to get. Why? Because Asperger's is what most people think of as autism. And then, of course, we have, like I said, you have every person, especially the terminally online people, that if you're a little bit socially awkward, just like if you're a little bit sad, you're depressed. If you're a little bit moody, you're bipolar. If you're organized, you have OCD. If you're fidgety, you have ADHD. This is what happens when you just willy-nilly fuck around with the language in science. It distorts reality. Shout out to Pink Parasol. Welcome to the party. Said 500 years from now, archaeologists will dig up our bones and do DNA tests. They will only find XX and XY. That's not true. That's not true. There are people with Klinefelters. That doesn't mean there's more genders. That means they are the exception to the rule. That's all it means. But yeah, 99.99999999999999999% of all people throughout human history were either XX or XY. Pink Parasol goes on to say Richie H of the UK is brave. In his 30s, he wears Depends all day. Constant leakage from his bottom surgery. What? No surgery can fix this. My grandma wore Depends in her 70s. Just a little leak. This is definitely something that we want to bestow on the children. I don't understand how this is an argument. I don't understand how you don't understand him, not you. I don't understand how these people don't get exactly what these people are saying to it. In fact, actually, I do get it. I do get it. Because they see it as just more religious dogma. The harder you lean on religion in your political conversations, the easier it is for the leftists to win. Yeah, self-diagnosing, yeah, all that stuff. Pink Parasol said Chloe Cole and other detransitioners came to realize they were lifelong medical patients. That's why detransitioners speak out in their anger. Yeah, and I think it was something around like 190,000 per surgery. It's like, this isn't about making people feel good. This isn't about making them feel accepted and nice. If you think that these establishments care about you or any of us, stupid, you're lost. You're lost.
See non-traditional gender identity as some sort of delusion to be fixed with conversion therapy. Besides, approaches like social transitioning, hormone therapies, and surgical interventions are evidence-based treatments. Scientific literature readily supports the efficacy of these treatments for improving self-image, self-esteem, improving quality of life.
So does assistance, but in a much higher rate.
And lessening the severity of depression symptoms. Let's take a quick look at that literature. This study from all the way back in 2013 examined the effects of testosterone treatment with or without chest reconstruction surgery on mental health in female to male transgender people.
Hey, we got Kelly Green in the building. Welcome to the party. Kelly Green said, I identify as intelligence fluent. Sometimes I'm smart and sometimes I'm a dumbass. True, but welcome to the party. Always glad to see you, buddy. And once again, said transition is conversion therapy on steroids. Yeah, it's like, if only it was conversion therapy. If only we were just sitting you down. No, you're not. I mean, come on.
It found that participants who are receiving testosterone endorsed fewer symptoms of anxiety and depression, as well as less anger than the untreated group. Participants who had chest reconstruction surgery in addition to testosterone reported less body dissatisfaction than both the testosterone only and the untreated groups. Furthermore, participants who were injecting testosterone on a weekly basis showed significantly less anger compared with those injecting every other week. So,
wait a minute. Wait. A t-test comparing participants on testosterone who were injecting 100 milligrams of testosterone on a weekly basis to those who were injecting 200 milligrams every other week. That's not twice the dosage, you fucking moron. Did I mishear him?
And this showed significantly less anger compared with those injecting every other week. On a weekly basis, the untreated groups. Furthermore, participants who were injecting testosterone on a weekly basis showed significantly less anger compared with those injecting every other week.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay.
So, the authors concluded, results indicate that testosterone treatment in female to males is associated with a positive effect on mental health on
for how long?
Measures of depression, anxiety, and anger.
For how long?
While chest reconstruction surgery appears to be more important for the alleviation of body dissatisfaction.
For how long?
On to the next study, which...
And just since I didn't get it from the last one, we are 2014. Going way back. All the way back to 2013. Dude, that was only 11 years ago. In terms of research, that's a drop in the bucket. Good call, because I didn't even think to look at it on the other one. But it's yeah, exactly, Zippy. Comment of the night. I don't know if there really are these studies or if you're just making a joke, because obviously MAID patients are dead. But like, yeah. That doesn't mean that because you want to be dead, that MAID is just perfect for everyone. If you're in hospice, that's a very different thing. But now it's a financial depression or you know, all these fucking more made up words to create a pathology. So now you have a reason to get MAID. Pink Parasol said USA is the longest running constitutional republic, 247 years. Yes, success. Haitians dedicated their islands to voodoo. Millions of them are always escaping on leaky boats. Let's go, Karen, is the cry of the fed up Canadians to their Prime Minister Trudeau. Yep. And that's why we don't want to follow in their footsteps, just as much as we really are. We don't want to be.
Which is yet another from the official journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics. This was a first of its kind long-term longitudinal evaluation of young transgender people.
For how long?
Who received puberty-suppressing hormones during adolescence and then cross-sex hormones and gender reassignment surgery in young adulthood. Note that we're not talking about children getting cross-sex hormones or surgery, because that's not how this stuff works. That's a lie made up to get you mad, and it's pushed by people who don't think anyone should be trans in the first place.
Well, I'm not one of those people, so I'm gonna let that off. Shout out to Richie H. I mean, yeah, that, like I said, guys, whenever if there's somebody that you would like me to talk to, it is 10 times stronger coming from a fan not that I don't like calling you know what I mean. Someone else rather than me. If I'm going, hey Richie, you don't talk to me, that's one thing. But if whenever he's on a podcast with, oh, you should talk to the Indian Jesus, you should talk to the Indian Jesus. Then when I email him, then I get a little bit, I have a little bit more gravitas. So let him know about the Indian Jesus.
The following factors were investigated: psychological functioning indicated by gender dysphoria, body image, global functioning, depression, anxiety, emotional and behavioral problems; objective well-being indicated by social and educational or professional functioning; subjective well-being indicated by quality of life, satisfaction with life, and happiness. The authors found the following. After gender reassignment in young adulthood, the gender dysphoria was alleviated, and psychological
For how long?
functioning had steadily improved.
For how long?
Well-being was similar to or better than same-age young adults from the general population.
For how long? You said this was the longest study, and you're not going to give any time frame?
Improvements in psychological functioning were positively correlated with post-surgical subjective well-being.
For how long? See, we could do a super long stream and pull up all of these sources. They're all linked. They're all linked right here. We could go through each and every source that he used. We could do that, but he's pulling out the parts that are best for his argument. That's all I'm using. All I'm using is what he thinks is helping his argument. I'm not even looking at the validity of the studies to begin with. I'm taking his word for it to a certain extent. But I'm just going based on what he is showing. So for every single, we're on source 18. For every single one of these sources, he has it down in the corner here. For every single one of these sources, for all we know, we could have pulled them up, and I'll drop the link here. I'll drop the link in the chat if any of you guys want to take the time to do this. Be my guest, because I don't. But that's all of the this is all of the sources that he used, and I don't know that every single one of them, we could open them up and see a reason why it's a bad study, whether it's the methodology or the metrics that's used or the sample size or anything else. I don't know. I'm just taking his word for it. And just on that, I'm knocking down every single thing he's saying. Not about the science itself, but about why the science that he's citing is irrelevant to the political position. Shout out to Dietrich. Welcome to the party. Better late than never. I've never felt more powerful and filled with energy. Not even when I was a kid. Don't get me wrong, I hurt, but damn, I am pumped. There you go. Always glad to see that. I definitely got to get my ass back in some martial arts training.
Improvements in psychological functioning were positively correlated with post-surgical subjective well-being.
For how long?
They concluded then, a clinical protocol of a multidisciplinary team with mental health professionals, physicians, and surgeons, including puberty suppression, followed by cross-sex hormones and gender reassignment surgery, provides gender dysphoric youth who seek gender reassignment from early puberty on the opportunity to develop into well-functioning young adults.
The opportunity to develop into well-functioning adults. I kind of feel like I want something a little bit stronger before you chop my fucking dick off. Well, you have the opportunity. Guess what you already fucking have without going through any of that? The opportunity to develop into a well-functioning young adult. Stupid. Desistance.
Next, we'll look at a systematic review examining the effect of cross-sex hormonal treatment on mental health and well-being in gender dysphoric people. The authors chose 17 studies for systematic analysis, with these studies investigating different aspects of mental health in response to cross-sex hormonal treatment. Both cross-sectional studies and longitudinal studies were represented. The authors found that when treated with hormone therapy, gender dysphoria individuals reported less anxiety.
For how long?
Dissociation.
For how long?
Perceived stress.
For how long?
Social distress, and higher mental health-related quality of life and self-esteem.
You know what? Let's change every time they talk about hormone therapy, sex change surgery, and any of these things. Let's replace it with heroin and see if it still fits. More specifically, when treated with heroin, obviously we're not talking about gender dysphoria, but, well, yeah, okay, fine. When treated with heroin, gender dysphoria individuals reported less anxiety, dissociation, perceived stress, social distress, and higher mental health-related quality of life and self-esteem. So I guess the answer then is to just shoot these kids up with heroin, right? I don't understand how you are missing. Again, I do understand. It's the dogma. It's the dogma and the confirmation bias that you already believe the thing that you think. You're not actually doing science. You're just reading other people who confirm your beliefs. That is not science. That is not reading science, is not doing science. That is not the same thing. This is the exact same thing as telling me that I should do this, that, or the other because it says so in the Bible. It is absolutely identical. It's just using a different book. It's just using a different piece of paper. It's just using a different authority. It's the same fucking thing. Pink Parasol said detransitioner Chloe Cola's breast area is still leaking 3 years after her mastectomy, and she's 22 years old. I definitely can't imagine that. I mean, it's horrifying. And somehow, the message, dogma, the dogma has created the message that if you don't want to support this, then you're the bigot. You're the bad person. Yeah, I remember that shit. Yeah, that was, well, I don't think it was FDA approved, but was it go away? I don't remember, but yeah, I do remember that shit. Put yourself in the shoes of a 36-year-old Richie H of the UK. He wears Depends all day because of the constant leakage from his bottom surgery. No surgery can fix this. You just can't. The damage is done. Hashtag opportunity to become a fucking whatever the fuck terminology they use. Monsignor said, I think Sweden realized fairly early that this doesn't really work in adults, then moved on to kids. Benjamin Boyce had a guest on talking about it. What doesn't really work in adults? I'm lost. What are we talking about? Film said, can I call out this scientific document, the use of the word reconstruction? If a woman gets a mastectomy and has breast reconstruction, they're reconstructing something that was there. Where are we seeing reconstruction? I mean, sure. I don't know what you're talking about, but makes sense.
Stress, social distress, and higher mental health related quality of life and self-esteem. This review also discussed specific mechanisms by which these results could come about. The mechanism which they gave the most credence was
facts. Richie H kept insisting that no one warned him. I would have. There was a lot of us out here. And I don't know when, what'd you say, 3 years ago he did this? So, I mean, What is a Woman wasn't out, but Matt Walsh was definitely out there. But, as Pink Parasol says, bigots and transphobes. So, I mean, if you're not going to listen, then okay. So they're calling the construction of a male chest on a female reconstruction. Okay, I think that's more of just like the fact that they're getting rid of something and then putting something else in that place. Like if there was a statue and they tore that statue down to make a new statue, then the reconstruction, meh.
Specific mechanisms by which these results could come about. The mechanism which they gave the most credence was the treatment's efficacy in reducing non-satisfaction connected to the incongruent body image of gender dysphoric people. This incongruent body image, they suggested, was not a fixed psychological problem which persisted regardless of external factors.
Oh, so you mean that with proper therapy and counseling, you could change that psychological state and not need to change the biological state. Gotcha. Oh, wait, you're saying the opposite. Again, did I miss him?
Was not a fixed psychological problem. This incongruent body image.
So this incongruent body image, this image that I am a man, but I feel like a woman,
they suggested, was not a fixed psychological problem.
So that's not a fixed psychological problem. So if it's not a fixed psychological problem, then why are we treating it with a fixed biological solution? That don't make no sense. That don't make no fucking sense.
Which persisted regardless of external factors.
So again, if it's regardless of external factors, then why are you doing all these external factor shit? Maybe focus on the psychological. Crazy, right?
This contrasts with psychological disorders like, say, body dysmorphia. The authors
I'm misunderstanding what he's saying, because if he's now going back on exactly what he said about anorexia, then I'm going to throw my whole studio out. Pink Parasol said Alex L of, I think, Finland on YouTube. He is being honest about his horrible bottom surgery complications. The list is endless. The list is endless. But just like every other issue, first they will say it's not happening. Then they'll say, well, that's only here and there. And then they'll say it's good. It's good. They'll come up with something like, well, it's good that now more people are able to live their true life. And unfortunately, there's some people that are going to, there's going to have side effects for anything. That's what they will say. That's what they will say. Should we call it deconstruction, reconstruction? Yeah, fair enough. I think we have other things that are semantically even more important here. So I'll give them reconstruction if they want it.
Concluded. This review suggests that gender dysphoria-related mental distress may benefit from hormonal.
Oh yeah, I need to back that up.
Problem with incongruent body image, they suggested, was not a fixed psychological problem which persisted regardless of external factors. This contrasts with psychological disorders like, say, body dysmorphia.
So he's just claiming that it's not a fixed psychological position, but it also can't change.
What?
That's what he just said.
Authors concluded, this review suggests that gender dysphoria-related mental distress may benefit from hormonal treatment intervention.
For how long?
Even recognizing the suffering of non-hormone treated gender dysphoria individuals, which represents a possible risk factor for more severe or full syndromal psychiatric disorders
for the rest of your life.
Mental distress in gender dysphoria may be considered as a transient reaction to the non-satisfaction connected to the incongruent body image and not necessarily a stable psychiatric comorbidity.
So you might, have some mental distress as all the bigots and transphobes out there come at you. But I guess so, Zippy. I guess so. It's in black and white. It's in black and white. And somehow you're reading the same exact words and getting the complete inverted understanding. How is that possible?
In this perspective, timely hormonal treatment intervention represents a crucial issue in gender dysphoria individuals' mental health-related outcome.
Yup.
There are
yep to you, Zippy, not yep to him.
Even more articles with similar findings out there, but I think you get the point. This has been
The point is that you want trans stuff to be to be acceptable, and despite any reality that it may not be what you want it to be, you will overlook that and find ideologically bent sources to support your position before actually looking at the science objectively. Yeah, I get it.
Been recognized as efficacious, evidence-based treatment for gender dysphoria in adults and adolescents for a while now. But lastly, let's look at the results of the 2022 U.S. Transgender Survey. This surveyed over 92,000 people aged 16 or older and included lots of questions about demographics and life experiences.
So we're talking about 92,000 people. So that is quite a sample size.
We'll just look at reports of satisfaction with transitioning in various ways.
Yeah, because if we look at methodology, then, my argument might not go that way.
94% who lived at least some of the time in a different gender than the one they were assigned.
So I'm just going to read this. So nearly 94% who lived at least some of the time in a different gender than the one they were assigned at birth reported they were either a lot more satisfied or a little more satisfied with their life. And what is the time frame?
At birth reported that they were either a lot more satisfied, 79%.
You ever got married? What do they call that period after you first do something drastic? It's like has something to do with like bees and space and fucking honey and a honeymoon. So it's almost like there's a honeymoon period going on from a huge life decision. If every single thing that you say can be retorted to, I was being sarcastic, obviously, I know. If every single thing that you're putting forward has the same refutation, how long How long? How long? How long are you a little bit more satisfied? Because if it's 3 days, if it's 3 years, it doesn't fucking matter. And we don't have 92,000 people who have done this. Thank goodness. But of the people that we do have that have done this for a long time, I don't know about most of them, but too many of them regret it. Shout out to Brandy. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. First live. Well, welcome. I very, very, very much appreciate you being here. We also got Zippy DSM Lee over on with the $1 Rumble chat, which of course comes with a treat for my co-host Morty. Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very, very, very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And that's all right. And we'll dive right back in here. So yeah, again, all of this stuff is the timeline is not discussed, so it is useless.
Than the one they were assigned at birth reported that they were either a lot more satisfied, 79%, or a little more satisfied, 15%, with their life. 98% who were currently receiving hormone treatment reported that receiving hormones for their gender identity or transition made them either a lot more satisfied, 84%, or a little more satisfied, 14%, with their life. 97% who had at least one form of surgery for their gender identity or transition reported that they were either a lot more satisfied.
Do I have to say it?
88%, or a little more satisfied, 9%, with their life. Notice how the
for how long? For how long? You need to say how long, otherwise it is irrelevant. Dietrich says the cunty undertone with his smirk really gives him an I need to get beat because my dad never did appeal to him. That I don't remember exactly what sect he grew up in, but that is not true. He grew up in a very, very strict religious household, which again, most of the people who are like this do. Not everybody is as awesome as me and can see, oh, even though they fucking lied to me, I'm not going to go and now take up a new god in the government. And Philip said, notice the survey is talking about adults and adolescents. What about the children? Or is that, yeah, or are we just not talking about that now? Well, only when it's convenient. Only when it's convenient. Remember, truth and reality don't matter. It's only the power. The power to say, yes, you can fuck a child. That is what they want, to have sex with your children. And they will get there by creating the precedent that your child can consent to this medical thing with their genitals. Why wouldn't they be able to consent to something much less I don't even know what word you would use, because it's certainly not less harmful, but it's not as, I was going to say it's not as permanent, but you know what, that's the argument that they're going to make. They're going to say, if you can chop off a body part, then you should be able to have sex with it. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
Physical medical interventions actually correlate with more satisfaction and
for how long? Bernie said, I've seen your leaving story. Hey, shout out. I felt that 1000% religions shouldn't matter. It should matter our morals and our love for the country. Hell yeah. Dilly to Brandy. Thank you. I completely agree. It's the values, that family, community, tradition, capitalism, gratitude and grace, all of that stuff is what really matters. All of that stuff. M169 said adults or adolescents, are not adults, even though they aren't small children. That is true as well. And I would love to know what the again, with that list of sources, I would love to know what they are considering an adolescent. Because we all know with the shooting statistics, they say, oh, mass shooting is the biggest death for children. 1 to 19. Like, wait a minute.
What?
That's not typically what we mean when we say children. But whatever we got to do. The Bible says it is better to starve the nation than allow one of these people to live. And that's why they believe the things that they do, because it says shit like this. So keep pushing this and they will continue winning. Good job. It's your fucking fault. Yeah, something like that. Something like that. They'd be like, well, it's less invasive. Is it though? I mean, maybe. I really don't know. That's a Sophie's choice if there ever was one, but god damn.
Notice how the physical medical interventions actually correlate with more satisfaction and less dissatisfaction than social transitioning alone. It's almost like these treatments reduce gender dysphoria and bring about better quality of life.
Or a shout out to Indie Film, knocking unwanted foe out of there and becoming the new sponsor of a stream. Saying hello to Brandy and the love of the game. Let's go, let's go. Thank you, sir. Very, very, very much appreciated. What did she say here? She said, I have a 10-year-old. I can't imagine the state trying to take away my rights if I don't confirm one of his many imaginary thoughts. Yeah, it's many. Great point there. There's so many imaginary thoughts that come from children. How are we supposed to determine which is the one that we should take seriously and bring them to a doctor to change their biology? And you can see how far the mental gymnastics have gone to be able to maintain that position. And so if you think that just say, well, God said this stuff is bad, and if you're going to go with that shit, you're going to fucking lose. You're going to fucking lose.
It's like these treatments reduce gender dysphoria and bring about better quality of life.
For how long?
Again, Frank Turek is completely out of his depth on this subject, while Sean...
Projection! No, sir. You see, you are out of your depth. While you may understand how scientific papers are written, you don't understand the politics of why people are against the things that you are talking about. You should know that you can't get an you can't get an ought from an is. Science cannot tell you what you ought to do. It can only tell you what is.
Nods along, seemingly unaware that the guy he invited on to inform his audience is profoundly ignorant, spreading nothing but misinformation. You know, I would consider advocating against evidence-based medical care for anyone to be a harmful action. Remember that Frank Turek himself said that harming LGBT people is wrong within his own moral paradigm.
Yeah, it's almost like we're not bigots. It's almost like we're not bigots, and we just, don't want to see you destroy our nation's children. Crazy thought, right? Gontek says, seems to be the one question this guy just wants to shy away from the entire video. Makes you wonder how many people who watch it will actually ask it themselves. Not very many. Not very many. Brandy's finding a home. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I love to see it.
It's really not looking so good for you here, Turek. You might want to...
Projection! It's really not looking good for you here, Genetically Modified Skeptic. We get drunk with all this goddamn projection.
Consider repenting, or at least not acting like you're an expert on medical science when your actual career is mostly just arguing with college students about Jesus.
You can argue with me. Hey, shout out to Brandy. No question, no comment, just pure love of the game. Thank you so very, very, very much. We're one set down, but I will add you. Oh, we're down there. Thank you so very much, and welcome to the party. If it is, I know it's your first time here, but anybody else, if it is your first time here, welcome. This is Morty, and I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense, saying just love. Thank you. You guys are amazing. I know you don't like when I get mushy. I know you don't like it, but y'all are warming my heart. You are warming my heart. It feels so amazing to know that I can come out here and speak openly, speak freely, and you guys not only will come here and listen, not only be part of the conversation, but open up your wallets and give me your hard-earned money. That does not go unappreciated. Thank you so much. Let's keep this party raging.
Medical science when your actual career is mostly just arguing with college students about Jesus. And now, on to the next clip.
Let's go. I think
Why
this
would I
is
do
it.
this to
I think
myself?
this is it.
Why?
Especially for kids, we
Okay.
can't be encouraging them to do these irreversible things to their bodies.
Bigot!
to their perfectly healthy bodies. We need
that. I heard something. I thought. I don't even want to say it. I don't even want to say it.
to get them counseling. And by the way, 80% of young people that have this so-called gender dysphoria, whether it's social media driven or not, grow out of it by the time they're 18. So it really makes no sense to give them cross-sex hormones or surgery, permanent solutions to a temporary problem.
So now we've seen that he is very aware of the notion of this 80% desistance rate. And even if it was a small sample, if it's statistically significant, it's way more statistically significant than any of the 60%, 40%, 20%, this anything that we've seen in any other science. The largest number, the most clear, definitive thing that we know about gender ideology is that if you leave it alone, 80% of children will grow up to be normal, which includes being homosexual. They will not continue with this gender dysphoria. They will grow up and grow up. We all had a hard time in puberty. I'm 5'4". I thought I was gonna shoot up, and I'm still wearing the same shit I could fit into in middle school. All right, it's hard for all of us. It's hard for all of us. But you grow up. These kids are being groomed. Well, I don't know if they're being. Well, some of them are. They're being groomed all over the place. They're being groomed on TV. They're being groomed. It's bad. It's bad. Brandon said, "You have so much fun. Oh my God, I'm changing my settings so I get notifications. Let's go. Let's go. Party, party, party." That's what I'm talking about. Brandy's the kind of person we want around here. All right, let's party on.
Or surgery, permanent solutions to a temporary problem.
Wait, he did it. He actually cited a statistic from a study. So he does think that scientific evidence on this subject is relevant and should be considered when determining treatment.
No, I am a short king, and I'm very happy to be well, I'm not very happy to be but I'm very well accepted that I'm a short king. All right? No fucking fact. Ooh, that was close. That was close. Whew. Whoa, that was close. No fruity boots for me. Thank you very much. That was close.
Wait, he did it. He actually cited a statistic from a study. So he does think that scientific evidence on this subject is relevant and should be considered when determining treatment.
Yeah, but just like everybody else, we know that you cannot get an ought from an is. You cannot get an ought from an is. You cannot get an ought from science. Science tells you what is, not what you ought to do. It was close. It was close. It was close. Let me know if you did you know where I was going, what I was trying to say? That was close. Brandon says, dude, I was a tomboy. Glad this shit wasn't popular in the 90s. Glad I was able to breastfeed. Just say, like, I mean, I obviously I'm not a woman or a parent, so I don't fully understand the experience. But from what I understand, what a pivotal moment in life to be able to breastfeed your own child. And shout out to you, Brandy. There's, not. I would say most of the women who are here tend to say the same kind of thing. Where, like shout out to M169, same kind of thing. I was a tomboy when I was young, but I'm glad. I'm glad. Shh. Oh, thank you very much. No boots for me, but yeah, all right.
Think that scientific evidence on the subject is relevant and should be considered when determining treatment.
Can I get it up from an
Interesting. Unfortunately for Turek, this claim of his is not actually true. This claim that 80% of young people diagnosed with gender dysphoria grow out of it by the time they're 18 is known as the desistance myth.
So I want you to really pay attention to what method he uses to say, oh, the science that they're referring to, we can push it aside completely.
Here's where it comes from. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, Edition 4, released in 1994, included diagnostic criteria for gender identity disorder. This included criteria for diagnosis.
Can we just, really quick, the DSM-4 came out in 94. We then had the DSM-4 TR. We then had the DSM-5, and then there's an updated 5. Since 94, Just saying. Just saying, the first 4 lasted a lot longer than the last 3.
The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, Edition 4, released in 1994, included diagnostic criteria for gender identity disorder. This included criteria for diagnosing children, such as persistence in wearing clothing stereotypical of the opposite sex, persistence in playing cross-sex roles in pretend play, intense desire to participate in pastimes stereotypical of the opposite sex, and strong preference for playmates of the opposite sex.
Hey, shout out to Michael McNucator. I got that wrong last time. I was watching it back and I was like, that's definitely not how you say it. Is it McNucator? Did I get it right this time? Welcome to the party. So 95% of trans are trendy trans because it's a collective communist psyop. If you can convince people they need radical saving, the cult injects its ideology. Thanks Scientology. Thanks Heaven's Gate.
Bingo.
Nail on the head. Coming in hot. Exactly. Now, again, so again, you say 95. I was gonna caveat this. Well, not everybody. Yeah, but yeah. It's that, and again, Indy's saying based on history, I bet the number is more like 99. Peter Boghossian said it's 100. He said it's 100. He said there are 0 real trans people, and I don't know about that. That's a strong claim, but it don't not make sense. It's trying to pretend for how long? For how long? That is the crucial question. How long? Dietrich says, my daughter, who is in the 2nd grade, read the only homework I've ever seen her have all year about Susan B. Anthony. Red flags in the text about men bad. Why is 2nd grader? What does that teacher write now? Well, of course, it teaches her to hate men. Obviously, you said it right there. You act like there's some grand, this grand complex plan. No, they just want you. They want to separate your children from you so that they can get control over them. So that when you are conservative and following these values, there we go. I'm terrible with names, so I do try very hard. But they want you to, and some people will I forget who it was. It might have been Seabass. It might have been Wesley talking about how, oh no, it was the fucking the guy who came up here with the fake voice. He was the one saying that it's the gay people who want to separate, or just the gay people who want to separate their parents and children because they want to make them gay. But not only is that stupid, it's so much bigger and more real than that. It's the whether you want to say the communist, the Marxist, the globalist, the whatever name you want to give them. The people who want all the power condensed into there you go. Shout out to Saint Michael. There we go. And of course, Seabass says that's true. Yeah. It's bigger than that. It's way bigger than that. And it's way worse than that. Because you can't just turn kids gay like that. Yes, you can absolutely have a strong effect, as we are seeing, but it's only going to last a certain amount of time. So that's not happening. What can be done is to indoctrinate these children in communist, globalist, Marxist, whatever, anti-nuclear family, anti-American, real progress, not capital P progressive, but actual progress. That's what they want. It's not about gays, this and gay. That's just one little aspect of it. And so if you focus on that, like so many Christians do, you're going to miss the bigger picture. Any film said I agree with that comment, but after 18, 1% will still have mental issues. Yeah, there's always going to be, a little bit, but for the most part, trans has nothing to do with that. If they have mental issues, they have mental issues. The trans isn't going to fix, if anything, it's going to hurt. Brandy said, what are the stats? Now, 30% or more of our kids think they're on the rainbow, more than twice as much as 10 years ago. Yeah, and that goes to the point that where the Christian guys brought up transableism. And Genetically Modified Skeptic he's like, oh, well, that doesn't happen. We've only seen it in Fox News. I'm just like, bro, how does that not immediately tell you that clearly the liberal mainstream media is not reporting the news? It's like, no, the guys that I believe that just said it didn't happen or didn't even mention it. Therefore, I don't believe.
What? Stupid.
All right, let's get this from Brandy and dive back in. Said so based. I love Buck Angel and Blair White and many other trans and gays. I love that they are against indoctrination of our kids. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We just had Mike Harlow. Shout out to Mike Harlow. And I've been throwing out clips of him all night and day. And, you know, he's gay as they come. But we had an interesting conversation. And the majority of it was not about sexuality because we have personalities. We are fully developed people. We don't stick to this kind of bullshit because we don't have anything else in life. Let's dive back in.
Diagnosing children, such as persistence in wearing clothing stereotypical of the opposite sex, persistence in playing cross-sex roles in pretend play, intense desire to participate in pastimes stereotypical of the opposite sex, and strong preference for playmates of the opposite sex. It also included the criterion repeatedly stated desire to be or insistence that he or she is the other sex. However, it did not require that criterion to be met for official diagnosis. In the 20 years that followed, this disorder and its criteria was found to be inadequate for assessing issues of stress related to gender, so it was eliminated as a disorder in the DSM-5.
So first, that's the first thing. It's just that, like, well, they eliminated it after they've already been indoctrinated, after the establishment, or rather the institution of the American Psychiatric Association has been infiltrated. They changed it. So, you know, we can just trust them because you know, the NIH, they never lie. Big Pharma never lies. Doctors are always right. The food pyramid is still what they, okay. All right. Never mind.
Which now contains updated, more specific diagnostic criteria for a different condition, gender dysphoria. For adults, these criteria revolve around a strong desire to be or identity with another gender. And for official diagnosis for children, one must meet the criterion, a strong desire to be of the other gender or an insistence that one is the other gender. Now, the origin of this 80% desistent statistic originates from a 1995 study by Kenneth Zucker and Susan Bradley, where they found that out of the 45 gender nonconforming children in their study, 80% were not found to be transgender at follow-up in their high school years.
So now for the first time, my question is answered. For how long? This is the only study that he's brought up that has any, or at least that he's talked about with any type of time frame. So we're talking about kids. Today we followed 45 children and adolescents or young adulthood. Our follow-up strategy has been, So again, I don't know exactly how they're defining adolescence or young adulthood. Okay, so it doesn't say it here, but maybe we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'll be fair about it and actually say what it is.
Susan Bradley, where they found that out of the 45 gender nonconforming children in their study, 80% were not found to be transgender at follow-up in their high school years. Since this was 1995, none of these young people were ever diagnosed with gender dysphoria in the first place, and the sample actually represented a wide spectrum of gender nonconformity, not just those who actually desired to be or insisted they were a different sex or gender.
So what you're saying is that without the social conditioning that trans is a thing and you can change your gender, that most kids just go back to believing that they're their own gender. And so, but yet it has nothing to do with the media, the social contagion, or any of that. How do those two things work together? Listen to it again with the captions in case you missed any part of it. This is the heart of what we're talking about. This is the heart of what we're talking about.
Since this was 1995, none of these young people were...
Again, 1995. We're not talking about way back in the day. 1995.
At follow-up in their high school years. Since this was 1995, none of these young people were ever diagnosed with gender dysphoria in the first place, and the sample actually represented a wide spectrum of gender nonconformity, not just those who actually desired to be or insisted they were a different sex or gender. I mean, the study contained kids who did not express desire to be or identification with another gender, but rather just preferred to dress or play differently than those stereotypical of their sex. This was not a sample of exclusively transgender or gender dysphoric kids by
transgender wasn't a thing. I don't understand how this changes anything. Is he trying to say that? I don't even get it. I don't even. What do you mean exclusively transgender or gender dysphoric kids? Neither is the LGBT community exclusively transgender or gender dysphoric kids. So I think it fits.
By today's standards. Many other studies followed before the reform of gender identity.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I graduated in 2012, and I have heard from people who pay attention to psychology that it was 2012 to 2013 when everything changed. And so if that's when the DSM-5 came out, that makes perfect sense because it was already in flux. I will say, I remember telling my roommates and the people that I hung out with on campus when my freshman year, I'm like, yo, there's so many fucking weird ass girls in the psychology department. There's so many weird ass fucking people. And then that was 2008 to 2012. That was the before time. Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, he did. He absolutely did. Brandy said, how much do the parents have to do with how their kids are on that scale? All a parent has to do is give positive reinforcement when the kid shows playfully opposite sex tendencies. It's a shame. Yeah, like but guys, it's the science. He read a thing that's in a science. He did a science. He can't be wrong. He can't be wrong. He did a science. Yeah, parents. I mean, and yeah, I'm not willing to say that anybody who has a trans kid is a failed parent, like Ian was saying. But certainly, there's something to be said about if you are this lacking in your social skills, that this is your this manifests. There's something to be said. Good for you, Seabass. I mean, that's a flex. Not everybody did. Yeah, that was just what it was. Concept said, this guy is going against the current trans ideology. Simply dressing or acting as the opposite sex is considered signs of transgenderism. Again, only when it's convenient. Exactly. Semantic obfuscation. They're not really gender or transgender, but I thought it was self-ID. So he said, liberal women are scary. They protect their envy, standards, and broken logic onto others. Indeed, they do. Oh, Jazz. Yeah. I mean, perfect example. If she doesn't stick that thing in her thing, I'm going to do it for her. What? That's called rape and assault. Zippy. Brandon said, it's like, yeah, exactly. We were talking about Asperger's before. Exactly the same.
It's by today's standards. Many other studies followed before the reform of gender identity disorder and its flawed diagnostic criteria. With samples that did not differentiate between those with a persistent desire or insistence to be the other sex and those who were gender nonconforming in other ways, researchers found wildly varying but significant rates of those who did not identify as another sex or gender in adulthood. In 2013, a particularly common source for the myth was published. This is the one myth I've personally seen cited the most. The
always, buddy, always
infamous Thomas Steensma study. Certain people really like to quote this part of the introduction.
No. Honest people who care about children and who care about America quote this part of the introduction,
which states that at the time of follow-up in adolescence or adulthood, these studies showed that for the majority of children, 84.2%, the gender dysphoria desisted.
What are we talking about? What are we talking about? 84.2%. So that's what? Out of 207 people is 84%. So what is that? Like 3-ish hundred? Shout out to Tony Blundetto over on Kick. Well, I can't say that. I can pull it up. I'll pull it up. I don't mind pulling that up, but I don't necessarily agree. But we like to represent everybody's opinions here. That's Tony says. I think the leftists started all of this, but to each their own. To each their own, and welcome to the party. But yes, as we can see, at the time of follow-up in adolescence or adulthood, these studies showed that for the majority of children, 84.2% desisted. Again, if you're not familiar, desistance means just going back to normal, meaning desisting from this notion that you have to change your gender and going back and, oh, maybe I'm just gay, or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm nothing and I didn't have a personality and I wanted to do something to become cool. Which, as we started this whole thing by saying parental support and peer support were the biggest things that were, the biggest indicators of self-deletion. Then he goes all the way back to say there's no social contagion.
Come on, man.
You do not get any more wrong than this. Yeah, angry communists, the leftists for sure. The leftists for sure. So he said, my mom helped to found the Bowles Center in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Worked as a secretary in the 90s. I only paid so much attention, but she tried very hard to understand her and my learning disability. Yeah, I mean, they want to make it seem like anything is easily fixed by a pill or a surgery or a this or a that, and it's just not. I'll pull this over, Tony. Tony says, look up the last names of the angry communists and leftists. All right. If every single person who was in charge of this stuff was Jewish, it still wouldn't mean anything to me because of the number of people in these positions. So if we only have 400 people and they are overrepresented, sure, they're overrepresented in terms of ratio, but there has to be another thing there. And maybe you have something there, but just not something I care too much to get into. All right, moving on.
Showed that for the majority of children, 84.2%, the gender dysphoria desisted. Now, if you check the citation for this, you find another of Steensma's studies published in 2011. So where in this 2011 study do we find that number? Also in the introduction, which is weird. Here, Steensma calculated that gender dysphoria persisted into adolescence for only 15.8% of dysphoric children. This implies that 84% of dysphoric children see their dysphoria desist.
What's a JQ agnostic? I'm so far outside of this world about like I've heard that before, but I don't know what it means. Okay. The Jewish question. Okay. I mean, yeah, I'll take that. JQ agnostic. Fair enough.
That gender dysphoria persisted into adolescence for only 15.8% of dysphoric children.
So maybe we shouldn't chop off their genitals.
This implies that 84% of dysphoric children see their dysphoria desist. He calculated this number by combining the results from several previous studies. He does not show his work here, which is very unusual for scholarly psychiatric research.
So you remember all the methodology and shit that you genetically modified skeptics showed in your thing? No, you just showed things. Yeah, I know you sourced it, but everything here is sourced. You say that it's in the introduction, but you're not reading the rest of the study, or at least you're not showing the rest of the study. But here's the kicker. I think it's right here. Is this it? Here's the kicker. This is the big moment that he can just throw this aside. This almost 85% of children who express interest in being trans will let that go as adults by high school. But he says this.
However, he does cite each of these previous studies, and there we find a few problems. Notice that 7 out of 10 studies were done even before gender identity disorder was standardized in 1994. A few date all the way back to the 1960s and 70s, when there was not yet any standard clinical understanding of gender identity. Even the most recent 3 were done before gender dysphoria replaced the defunct gender identity disorder. Without a clinical standard sufficient for classifying someone as having gender dysphoria versus other gender nonconformity, these studies could not have reliably identified samples made up of individuals who would be considered transgender or gender dysphoric by today's standards.
Yep. It's not gain of function. It's directed evolution. It doesn't count because they were using different words then. It doesn't count because they're using different words.
What?
The only study that you've shown that's gone back more than 20 years has the biggest number, the most statistically significant thing that you've showed in this video. And you brush it off because it doesn't fit what you want it to say. Well, we don't know if they were actually transgender because they were saying transsexual. We're talking about people who want to be the other gender. It doesn't matter if you call them tranny, transgender, transvestite, whatever. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a phenomenon of a person feeling like whatever. Sorry, who was it? I want to say Brody. Was it Brody? Who was the dude who was here earlier? I forget his name. I apologize. But whatever, whoever that was talking about with cerebral palsy. That, oh my God. It's right there. It's right there. Nothing about this gives you any credence. And everything about what you're saying, given what you're showing us, shows us that you may know how to look up studies. You may even know how to understand them, but you don't know how to put them in the context of the real world for how people actually live and want to live. I don't know if I finished. I don't even know if I finished this point before, but I was going to say, even if we were to grant that there was, everything that he was saying, and there's is absolutely near zero negative effect of transing your kid, it still wouldn't be appropriate to say that you're bigoted because you don't want this thing. So I don't understand what you are trying to do here. What is it that you think you're doing here? It's insane. All right, where was I? Oh, okay. Lost my spot. Hold on. SIDS? What about SIDS? Zibby said the 90s were a high time for mental awareness, mainly because government was defunding mental institutions and paid for shrinks. Until the game got too costly for the government to afford it. Yep. And the film said dropping off foreskins is kosher, chopping off dicks is not. I mean, I don't know about the foreskins either, but that's a different discussion. Especially when the rabbi's sucking baby dick. Kind of sus. Golden said wokies only know how to project or lie. Seems that way. It seems that way. Bernie said exactly. Who was the Navy SEAL that detransitioned who explained it as trauma and finding themselves attractive in the mirror? It has a name. I just forgot. Autogynephilia. AGP. These are people who do not have gender dysphoria. They are sexually attracted to themselves as a woman. Technically, what they call transgenderism, but a very, very, very different psychological phenomenon. But who cares, right? It helps us politically, so let's just put everybody in the same group. The guy who wants to tuck his dick and fucking be sexy in front of your 9-year-old daughter is not in the same societal group as a person who feels they have a different gender identity and just wants to express that. I think they're crazy, but I don't have any desire to stop them from living that fashion choice, because that's really what the fuck we're talking about. But I do care about the dude who is just doing this, abusing our sensitivities. Our sensitivity. We are the ones saying, we want you to be happy. We want you to live as you want. It's not for me, but you do as you like. They're abusing that. And here's an opportunity. They're gonna accept me. All I have to do is say that I'm a man. And here we get Leah Thomas. Here we get Dylan Mulvaney. Here we get fucking I don't know a name, but y'all fucking remember. I know y'all remember that a video from the Ulta spa where it's like, excuse me, there's a man waving his penis around in the bathroom. And like, oh, well, we respect transgenders.
What?
Like, yo, where does it stop? Where does it stop? It's crazy. Well, Zippy Sands, Guamtech, the projection is a lie. A lie is a projection. We need to turn the woke into perpetual motion machines and let them power civilization. There you go. There you go. There you go. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Michael says the most effective propaganda is when people's lives are at stake. Such a fucking psyop. Word salad the argument hard enough and it becomes ultra time consuming to debunk it piece by piece. Luckily for y'all, I have got all the time in the world and care enough to go bit by bit by bit by bit. Funny enough, real quick, I've gotten in the last 3 streams, I've gotten 5 different comments. I'm like, dude, or rather, nope, it was mostly clips, but 2 on streams as well. I got comments saying, this guy talks too much. He should just shut up and play the video. Guys, if you're not smart enough to realize that the link to the unedited thing is in the description of every single video, I don't know how to help you. Yeah, I do talk a lot. It's almost like I should run a YouTube show or something. Shout out to Rich from Tang. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Said, strawmen are easy to beat up. Yawn. Are you talking about me? Are you talking about dude? Because, yeah, I'm with Zippy there.
Of individuals who would be considered transgender or gender dysphoric by today's standards. So this 84% desistance figure is...
That's the whole argument. That's the whole argument. It's old, so the numbers don't matter. They studied the exact same phenomenon, but because they use different words, we can throw out the most definitive study that we have on this.
What? Oh, hell no.
Brandy said, women's sports is dead until we check every panty. That's, that wouldn't work now any day. Nowadays anyway, since insurance pays for a Barbie pockets. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad because inevitably we get to this point in the conversation where they're like, okay, well then how do you check? How do you check? Why are we not able to trust people to identify their fucking gender? Why have we incentivized people to misidentify their gender? Why is that a thing? That is, at the very least, the notion that we can't trust people to say what gender they are should tell you that there's a problem here somewhere. Maybe you don't have to pin it down, and maybe you don't have to know exactly what you don't like about it. But the fact that we are at a point in society where we can't we can't trust people to tell what their gender is. Something has gone wrong. Yeah, consider my laziest because don't you know I have no time to research anything myself? Well, that's the sad thing, dude, is that they spend ungodly amounts of time researching shit, but still come up with the fucking wrong answer. We're 2 dumbass Christians who are Christian apologetics can sit here and have the right answer just by common sense. That's the sad part. They know very well how to research. They can find bullshit on bullshit on bullshit on anything. They're not good at thinking. That's why they research, because somebody else is doing the thinking for them. Marx called his home. Dylan said, why does Dylan Mulvaney look like the witch from the Scary Godmother? That's very mean, okay? That's mean, all right? Do not on this channel. You don't talk about the Scary Godmother that way.
How dare you?
It's meaningless. Not to mention dubiously sourced.
Dubiously sourced from John Money. John Money. Yep, I am on Twitter at Indian Jesus off like official. Indian Jesus off like official. Yeah, John Money. You guys know John Money. He was the guy who was jerking off 5 months old to start this whole shit. But he's going to throw out John Money because it doesn't work for his argument right now. It is. It's Orwellian. They want people to question reality. War is peace, up is down. I wish it was more complicated than that. I wish I had something more to break apart. But it's this fucking simple. It's this fucking simple. And they take it this fucking far.
About the rest of Steensma's 2013 study. Doesn't it support the idea that a majority of gender dysphoric youths desist? Well, let's take a look. The study involved a sample of 127 youths diagnosed with gender identity disorder at the Center of Expertise on Gender Dysphoria in Amsterdam as children. So we're already dealing with a defunct diagnosis, which is insufficient for discerning between gender dysphoria and other gender nonconformity.
The argument that gender nonconformity and being transgender is different, therefore, we can't group them together as that is gender nonconformity. That is that is straight up semantic obfuscation. I need the captions for that one.
Diagnosed in Amsterdam as children. So we're already dealing with a defunct diagnosis, which is insufficient for discerning between gender dysphoria and other gender nonconformity.
Oh, so he's okay. I got it. So he's talking about gender dysphoria, aka being trans, versus gender nonconformity, aka being non-binary or being intersex or having an extra chromosome or one of those things. Even though that's only 0.01% of the population, we can just throw it away. We can just throw it away. It's so dishonest. It's so dishonest. Shout out to world famous Kirk Lazarus. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Love that profile picture. There you go. There you go. Moving on.
Diagnosis, which is insufficient for discerning between gender dysphoria and other gender nonconformity. But let's continue to see what else we find. They identified 37% of these participants as persisters, as they reapplied to the clinic in adolescence, requested medical treatment, were diagnosed again with gender identity disorder, and considered eligible for treatment.
But, we can't tell if they're part of this, this group that we're trying to learn about. They could be gender dysphoric or they could be gender nonconforming. We don't know. They could be completely different groups.
Meanwhile, 63% of participants did not return to the clinic, so the researchers counted them as desisters automatically. The participants could have not returned for any number of reasons other than their dysphoria going away, but I guess we'll never know.
I guess we'll never know, so we're just going to assume the opposite. I forgot to change the banner. A big shout out to the sponsor of the stream, Indie Film. Thank you, sir.
With methodological flaws this significant, any conclusion from this that a majority of gender dysphoric youths desist
is irrelevant. We could just throw it away.
Is not valid. You know what's interesting, though, is what the researchers involved in these two studies found from interviewing the participants who actually did show up at the clinic again. An excerpt from the discussion section of the 2013...
But wait a minute. If you're doing a study about not liking your gender or wanting to feel a different thing about your gender, and then you stop going to that thing, fair, we don't know why, but is it reasonable? Along with all the other information in that study, is it reasonable to think that maybe the reason that they didn't show up is because they desisted and realized, oh, I don't want to fucking do this? Because if they did, then they would continue. Just saying.
Teen study reads, persisters
back to 2013
indicated that they believed that they were the other sex, and the desisters indicated they wished they were the other sex.
Okay, wait. Okay, so persisters, so the people who go through with this, believe that they actually were. Notice how it's in quotes, as if that's, not accurate. I told you. I got bullshit from people saying that when I started using the, talking about dogma, saying whether you believe in a man in the sky or believe that a man can transform into a female, specifically saying female, because specifically talking about changing of sex. Now they're using other in quotes, as if that's not scientifically accurate. Yes, this is totally scientific. The other sex. But that wasn't even my point. So fine. He's saying that the people who believe, or the people who continue, believe that they are the other sex. The people that don't understand reality. So transgender people, according to this, your 2013 study, are delusional. That's the conclusion here. Because you are not the other sex, regardless of whether you persist or desist. You are not the other sex. So the desisters are the sane people. The persisters are the delusional people. How is this still an argument? How is this still a conversation? Yeah, shout it out. There you go. Guamtech said this guy proves Penn and Teller right. Statistics are bullshit. At least the one this guy's using, and how he's converting them. Yep, exactly. Didn't you? Yep, yeah. We were talking about this just before you got on. That he was using a study from Sweden, and it's like, yo, they stopped doing this stuff for kids in Sweden. Didn't you stop gender affirming treatment on minors, even though they led the way? Yep. But you know, he doesn't mention that. That would be not good for his argument.
They were the other sex, and the desisters indicated they wished they were the other sex. This difference,
and that's rational. That's at least rational. If you are for some reason wishing you were the other sex, understanding that you're not, that's not insane. That's just a desire, and you don't always get what you want. And so you desist and become a normal person. Or you just let the media and the Democratic establishment tell you that you are the other sex. And even so, if the current DSM can be so compromised on this, how can we trust the rest of it? We can't. We can't.
Difference may also underlie our finding of a higher report of cognitive cross-gender identification in the persisters than in the desisters. Either they experience an alternative gender identification, or they interpreted the question differently. Nonetheless,
no, either they are delusional and they think they are the other sex, or they're not. That's it. They misunderstood the question. They misunderstood the question. Are you a man? Are you? Well, I don't quite understand. It's like, dude, my 3-year-old got into my mascara and painted the walls with his face. Some parents would transition that. You know, I wouldn't put that out there. You know, depending on where you live, the government might see it and come and take them. You never know. You never know. You never know.
Explicitly asking children with gender dysphoria with which sex they identify seems to be of great value in predicting a future outcome for both boys and girls with gender dysphoria. That falls directly in line with current diagnostic criteria for gender dysphoria and contradicts the narrative that we should not listen to young people who persistently identify as another gender.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It shows you that the people who are wrong are in the persistence group, and the people who are right are in the desistance group. So the people who are in the persistence group have a mental deficiency, as was agreed upon by the entire world until apparently 2013. And without reason was that changed. It was political reasons, not medical reasons. Political reasons. Just like gain of function.
Because they will most likely stop doing so in the future. The most popular source people cite for the desistance myth
is the most, the strongest source in your video.
Fails to support and even contradicts the myth itself.
How does it contradict it? How did... I'm going to clip this part. If you're watching the clip and you can tell me, maybe I am the dumbest person alive. Maybe I'm the dumbest person alive, but I genuinely want to understand how was anything what was contradicted in that study? It seemed clear as day. Not only do most children desist, but the children who don't, the children who persist, continue to be delusional. Why should we feed into that delusion? And how do those numbers contradict the fact that we shouldn't? Now you're just saying things. Pathetic.
Desistance myth fails to support and even contradicts the myth itself.
I thought
now,
so.
Recent studies that look at persistence rates of
recent studies that don't have any time frame and don't know what the fuck is going on and are totally ideologically bent.
Trans youths, without relying on outdated diagnostic criteria, do not find that most desist. A 2022 study published in the Journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics.
5 years. Okay, so 5 years. Now we're talking about 5 years after the initial. What did it say?
Desist. A 20
gender identity 5 years after social transition. So after social transition. So we're probably not even into any type of surgery within 5 years. Actually, that's not true. Let's see.
2022 study published in the Journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics followed a sample of 317 youths who had made a binary social transition before the age of 12. At an average of 5.37 years after their initial transition, 94% were living as binary transgender youths.
So again, if 80% from what was it, 94? If 80% of people in 94 who didn't know about all the media and trans bullshit and the social contagion desisted, and now only what did he say? Whatever percent. Doesn't that only tell us that it is exactly the social contagion? It is exactly the media. It is exactly the ideology push. I don't understand how you get another conclusion from this.
After their initial transition, 94% were living as binary transgender youths. 3.5
we're going from 84% desisting to 3.5. But the concept hasn't changed.
5% were living as non-binary and 2.5% were living as cisgender. Importantly, given all the political discussion around this, all those who retransitioned to cisgender did so by the age of 11, and only one ever received puberty blockers.
Told ya. So the conclusion is that without media pressure, without social pressure, kids will desist. With this pressure, an overwhelming majority will fall to the media messaging. They will follow the agenda, whatever it is. That is the conclusion. What's the "you are trans" joke? I don't get it. He sounds like Don Lemon. Oof. Oh, Don Lemon. Studies show. Gender surgery? You mean Satan's Hail Mary? I like that one. Michael said, how many kids in the persistence group have Transhausen by proxy moms? Dee Dee Blanchard types. Hell yeah. I mean, fucking Jazz Jennings type. I can't even think of the word. Munchausen by proxy. Yeah. Transhausen by proxy. I like that. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna use that. 412 pre-adolescence. Funny how they aren't on your other stats, because that wouldn't help. That doesn't help. I need to get to my conclusion. Jeez.
None had received gender-affirming hormones. The author stated, these results suggest that retransitions are infrequent. More commonly, transgender youth who socially transitioned at early ages continue to identify that.
For 5 years. For 5 years. This study said 5 years after social transition. So you don't know. This doesn't speak to what happens. You don't know whether the people who persist for 5 years after social transition will desist the next year, which many of them will. And at that, once you're getting past this point with the pre-adolescents and the people who aren't even on the hormones and stuff yet, well, now it's not desistance. Now you have to detransition.
That way. Studies of detransition rates in general, not just in youths, also find very low numbers.
For now, because it's new and we haven't hit that 10-year mark.
A recent systematic review of 27 studies involving a total of 7,928 transgender patients who underwent any type of gender-affirming surgery found that the prevalence of regret after gender-affirming surgery was 1%.
After how long? Does it even say? Does it say? 1%. Overall, 33% underwent transmasculine procedures and 67% transfeminine procedures. Oh, okay. So mostly men. The prevalence of regret among patients undergoing transmasculine and transfeminine was under 1%, and respectively, a total of 77 patients regretted. A total of 77 patients regretted having had gender reassignment surgery. 28 had minor, and 34 had major regret. That's enough for me. That's already enough. That's already enough. Brandy said, I feel sorry for the guys that detransition who are on puberty blockers. Micro dick and can't even get a pocket if that's the way they want to go because it never grew. Well, or they could be like Jazz and just have an open wound and have to dilate it. And I don't know how deep it's going to go, but you're right. It's sad. But we should argue for more because it's only 77 patients regretted. It's only 34 that had major regrets. Only 28 had minor regrets.
Another recent study with a large sample size.
Oh, he's just going to end it there. He's just going to end it there.
Is almost 2,000 individuals.
Yeah, right. That's what they're going to say. Well, if you guys would have just accepted them, they'd still be here. You're so bigoted. Why can't you just accept them? Pathetic. Pathetic. All right. So let's let this run a little bit
who
more.
Underwent gender affirming surgery found that only 6, that's 0.3%, either requested reversal surgery or transitioned back to their sex assigned at birth.
After how long?
I promise I'm almost done with statistics here, but I've just got to mention the largest survey ever done that assessed this issue. The 2015 US Transgender Survey.
The National Center for Transgender Equality. #objective. #totally not biased.
What did it?
Right here, in case you missed it, the National Center for Transgender Equality is I totally trust them. Totally trust them that if they found that something was in any way against the LGBT ideological push, that they would report it, right? Because they're the science. It's a survey. They're the science. Come on, man. Like, is this even worth looking at? Is this even worth the time?
Find 8% of respondents reported having detransitioned at some point. Most of those who detransitioned did so only temporarily. 62% of those who had detransitioned reported that they were currently living full-time in a gender different than the gender they were thought to be at birth. Respondents who had detransitioned cited a range of reasons, though only 5% of those who had detransitioned reported that they had done so because they realized that gender transition was not for them.
Which, again, and film is, again, a signal to you that this is not objective science. This is ideologically bent. It's pseudoscience. This is pseudoscience.
Representing 0.4% of the overall sample. The most common reason cited for detransitioning was pressure from a parent at 36%. 26% reported that they detransitioned due to pressure from other family members, and 18% reported that they detransitioned because of pressure from their spouse or partner.
Well, if the transes said it, they said they're the other sex, so we should totally believe them, right?
Other common reasons included facing too much harassment or discrimination after they began transitioning, 31%, and having trouble getting a job, 29%.
I'm so sure that that's because of inside your mind, you think you're the other gender and not because you have a fucking blue beard and a dress. I'm sure. Positive even. It can't have anything to do with the fact that you look like you're insane. Because you are insane. You can look like that if you want. But don't expect to get a fucking corporate job in an office. Bigotry.
So only a minuscule number of people who transition end up detransitioning.
Oh, and yeah, fuck those people, right?
And it appears that most of the time, they only do so because they face negative social consequences like discrimination from family, friends.
But you started off by saying the only reason people do this in the first place, or the only reason that people stay alive is because of the support from around them. So does the support around the person help the person or hurt the person? Context is no matter how you look at it. Yuri Bezmenov was right. Demoralization is the goal, no matter what side you're on. If you can't see it by now, if you're still saying all this stuff is conspiratorial and you're like, all right, dude, like enjoy your bugs. Enjoy your bugs. I don't know what the fuck to tell you anymore. Brandy said, I actually feel bad for all the LGB kids that are peer pressured into gender affirming care. Seems the opposite of being pro LGB. Makes sense. Yeah. Gay is not good enough. Gay is the new straight. Gay is the new straight white man. He did.
And even employers. We absolutely should be compassionate toward those who regret their transition, just as we should be compassionate toward those with vaccine injuries. But being compassionate toward that very small statistical minority does not have to entail placing restrictions on the vast majority.
Well, but it does, though, because if we don't want these people to do this harm to themselves, then we need to place restrictions. But I guess there is a level of there's a level of consistency here. That, well, 85% of these people are going to be fine, so you shouldn't get to choose whether you opt out of this. Whether it's a vaccine or it's allowing the government to trans children despite their parents' wishes. It only hurts a portion of the people, and we want it. So it's okay. That's the bottom line for these people. They want what they want because they want what they want. That's the depth of this. I want this. I don't think he was. I think he was trying to. He's definitely not anti-vax. What I think he was trying to say, that was my facial expression. What I think he was trying to say was whether it is somebody who is detransitioning, being, oh, you're not on our side, or somebody who is vaccine injured, also not on our side. Because remember, the detransitioners are the bad ones because they aren't living the truth that they're supposed to live that makes me look good. They're just living as they were born.
How dare you?
And that doesn't get me political points. So, like, it's awful. It's bad. Yeah, exactly. Now, let's not be naive and act like there are not kids who will self-delete because they can't do what they want to do, whether it is transitioning or anything else. That will happen. But those are things that you cannot prevent. Deaths due to addition are what you want to address. You're adding something to this child's life that is making them want to self-delete. If there's going to be stuff in child's lives that wants to make them self-delete. It's sad but true. All the more reason we shouldn't be adding to it. All the more reason. So, guys, shout out to Unwanted Foe here calling out the after party. It is free to join the Discord server. There is he just dropped the link right there. It is absolutely free to join. We have our free chat channel and our current events where we hang out all day, running conversations, sharing memes, all articles, all this good stuff. We get into some interesting conversations there. You should definitely join. But if you join as a member of the channel, it's only $2.99 a month. If you join as a member of the channel, you not only get the full server, which includes our disciple chat and our watch party and the after party where you're not stuck behind your keyboard. You're actually on screen with me and everybody else. Hit that join. Hit up the Discord. I will make sure you have the permissions. And I am already in the after party. So as soon as this is done, we are headed over to Discord for the after party where we can talk about all of this or anything else that you like. I really enjoy it, and I think you will as well. Either way, join the Discord. Make sure you are partying with us 24/7. Let's grab some more of these. Brandy said, it's sad the detransitions are thrown to the side. Chloe Cole hurt my heart. Yeah, they all do. But to him, she's just a statistic. Some people are going to die. Some people are going to hurt because we want this thing. The cost-benefit analysis, the math ain't mathin'. No money, no sister, no house. No flower, no love.
What?
I don't even know what you're singing. New Film said, yes, giving children an experimental mRNA vaccine and trans and kids is the science. You ain't wrong. No after party for Guam Tag. All right, guys. Well, I really, really do appreciate you hanging out. Let's go through these, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who donated. We had Unwanted Foe with a 2 and another 2. We had JL with his Canadian too. Thank you very, very, very much. We had Randy, the newcomer with the super sticker. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining the show. I hope you have subscribed, and I hope we will see more of you. You had some awesome things to say in the chat. And of course, our sponsor of the stream, as usual, Indie Film. It's always, I don't know what happened to Dan. Dan's been around, but I haven't seen him. But since Dan, it's either been Indie Film or Unwanted Foe every single night with Zippy and those gifted memberships. Man, I love you guys. I fucking love you guys. Thank you. So very, very much for hanging out with me, guys. Once again, he ain't there. So I'm your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, guys, I am out of here. Peace.